What a view!
This is incredible.
An Ontario County nonprofit.
Over horizon high-altitude balloons.
3, 2, 1, launch.
Hey guys, Tori here from Overlook Horizon. We're coming to you live here. It is a Saturday evening, 8:30 in the evening here on the East Coast, 7:30 Central Time. We're getting ready for the big SpaceX update here, or the announcement that's coming up for their Starship. This is the next generation rocket for SpaceX, and I am super excited. I've been watching all these updates that have been going on over the last couple of weeks here, as far as like assembling the rocket and putting the thing together, and they just finally stacked it like yesterday, and it seems like this is coming together really quickly, and I was kind of worried that they weren't going to have the rocket put together in time for today's update, but it seems like it is all put together and ready for the update tonight. So this is really, really exciting for me to see this all come together and actually see that we've got at least a prototype built. I mean, this is not the actual Starship. We're not ready to send people to Mars quite yet, but we're heading that direction. This is pretty exciting, and this is no Starhopper. Much love to the Starhopper. The Starhopper was a pretty awesome platform, and that last flight that we had was incredible to watch. I mean, it was only a minute long, so it just left me wanting more to it. But it was still pretty awesome to watch that little water tower do its thing. But now we've got this massive, massive rocket that looks like something out of a 1950s comic book, but it's awesome. I love it. So anyways, so we're here. We're going to check this out. We're going to talk about it a little bit. So hello to everybody. I see a whole bunch of the comments flowing in on all over the place. We got Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, a couple over on our Twitch as well. So hello to everybody. Hail to the Space Lobster, says Christian over on Facebook. Columbia's with us over on Periscope. We got a whole bunch of our YouTube Space Lobster community. Everybody checking in and saying hello. So yeah, thanks for joining us here. And Streaky Toaster says, give it 10 years, which reminds me, actually, significance for today is it the 10th anniversary? I think it's the 10th anniversary, or maybe it's the 11th anniversary. I think it's the 10th anniversary of the Falcon 1 Flight 4, the very first Falcon 1 that they got into orbit, right? That's today. And I think it's the 10th anniversary. I want to say that was like 2009, wasn't it? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong on that. But yeah, I believe we're the 10th. So yeah, kind of a significant day as well for SpaceX and SpaceX's history. At 50 meters, it's 50 meters, a spaceship prototype. The Starship prototype second stage is taller than the Falcon 9 first stage. Yeah, right? This thing is massive. 50 meters tall. Let's dive right into it. I got pictures here. You obviously saw, if you were waiting in the as we were getting started, we had the picture up already. 11th anniversary, everybody's telling me. 11th anniversary, says Andy on our YouTube channel. Thanks, Andy. Thanks for correcting me on that. I couldn't remember if it was 10th or 11th. There you go. Columbia also says 11th. Okay. I thought maybe it was the 11th, but for some reason the 10th anniversary was sticking in my head. But anyway, so here it is. This is, I'm green screening this, so I gotta cut my hand off if I do that. but there it is, fully stacked and assembled. Look at this thing. This is crazy. Now this doesn't quite look like the renderings that we saw. Now, Elon Musk updated us about a year ago, right about this time last year, with a whole bunch of new renderings and updates on how the Starship had changed. And obviously it has changed since then, because we've got the original design had 3 of these larger fins down here on the bottom. I gotta get out of the way. There were 3 of these larger fins. There was gonna be another one like here-ish, that was going to be on the back side, not the side that would be re-entering, but the back side of the Starship. But they have scrapped that, and they've gone with 2. And then also the little canards way up on top. I also can't point to there because my hand gets cut off. But the canards that are way up on top there, those are slightly larger than some of the renderings were, but still roughly about the same idea, but slightly larger. And then we also got to see, as they were putting this together, that the way that they were going to be putting these together was I mean, to be expected, but, I guess part of the thing that kind of just surprised me, or just that I didn't really think about, was, the gap between the fins and the body. Obviously these have to mate together, whether it's these larger fins here, the smaller little canards up on top, they have to mate together. And so there's a little bit of gap. They also move. And so there's got to be a little bit of a gap there for them to move. But they do also have, and I don't know what the correct term is for it, but they've got some plating that's going to go over the top of that gap there for aerodynamic. So there's not just a giant, piece of, giant opening there that can cause extra drag and things like that. So you can kind of see a little bit of that plating right there. Right? What? Oh, yeah, right there. So yeah, just kind of interesting things as they're putting this together. You're like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about something like that, and we got to see some of that. Which also shout out to all the locals that are down there in Boca Chica, guys like Austin Bernard, Mary the Boca Chica gal. I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch of people. Lab Padre, all those people that are spending the time taking photos, sharing them on Twitter. Lab Padre with all his videos and the live videos he's doing. They're awesome. It's so awesome to be able to keep track of all that, because this is pretty unprecedented for any sort of rocket development. I mean, we don't get this kind of view or this kind of access for like United Launch Alliance's Vulcan rocket, or even Blue Origin's New Shepard or their New Glenn rocket, or any of I mean, we don't see any of their development stuff. They build it, and when they're ready, they're like, hey, we're ready. So we actually get to see kind of the whole development process here, and a lot of it is attributed to SpaceX and how open they are with sharing this sort of information. But a huge portion goes to the community that's down there and the people that are excited about this and taking the pictures and the videos and sharing them out. So huge shout out to all those guys. That's awesome. Thank you for doing that. Let's see. Are the windows on the other side? So no windows on this yet. This is not actually crew ready. There won't be any people flying on this. This is a prototype. So this rocket is designed to test the aerodynamics, the maneuverability, to test the Raptor engines that are on the bottom, and basically make sure, computer systems, make sure they can control it the way that they think they can control it. So obviously they've simulated and modeled this, and they believe that it's going to work a certain way, and hopefully they're right on that. But this platform is going to be suborbital, at least to start. There's some confusion on this, because I believe Elon said a couple of weeks ago on Twitter. Originally, I thought this was just going to be a suborbital one, but he said a couple weeks ago on Twitter that they were going to be ready for orbital flights for what I think is this platform, unless they're building another one. So I was a bit confused on that. So maybe we might find some of that out tonight, what their exact plans are. But I know their immediate plans are suborbital. They're going to go up, come back down, land it. So they make sure that they can lift off. They're going to be checking for things like vibrations and, how all the joints and everything's holding up under the stresses of the rocket engines. And then they'll bring it back down and land it and make sure they can control it and get it to a landing spot. So just a prototype here, no windows yet. Let's see. That is so cool. I just love that we have a Starship to look at. I know this is real life. This is not a rendering whatsoever. I've got other pictures, but this is my favorite one by far, and I'm just going to kind of leave it here for a little while. So these self-landing rockets. So these self-landing rockets is nothing to you guys. How does that even work? Yeah, right. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes into this. I mean, the software that's involved in it, the engineering for all the control surfaces and bringing it down. I mean, there's so much going on here that SpaceX has made it so routine that sometimes you forget that 10 years ago, this concept of landing rockets after they launch just didn't exist. We just launched them and they would crash. When they were done with them, they'd separate and they crash into the ocean, and that was it. We didn't care about reusing rockets, but now we're reusing them, bringing them back, and I mean, that's going to bring the cost of space way down and hopefully further development. So Buzzin' on Periscope says, it's real because it looks so fake. I mean, well, I'm not sure if you're being serious or not, but I agree with that statement. I mean, I actually think I would go with, it's real because it looks, it's kind of unpolished. I mean, this was put together in the field. I mean, this wasn't like precision machining that was done and then welded together. I mean, this was put together in the field by hand here. And so these will get, presumably, these will get more refined and more polished as we get to a final product. But you know, they're changing so much, and that's one of the things that SpaceX is known for. It's also drives some people crazy, especially at NASA for people like commercial crew program and things like that. But SpaceX changes very rapidly. They adapt, they develop, and they make so many changes so quickly that their design plans, I mean, just look at this. This was not the design a year ago. Most of the time they develop these things and then they don't make any changes to them, so, or not any major changes. I mean, there are major changes here that weren't in the designs a year ago. So yeah, we're gonna find out hopefully all the big changes that have gone on from Elon Musk tonight in about 18 minutes, which I probably should show that up here. I'm gonna use like my T-minus countdown here. We don't actually have a launch, but this is when the event starts here in about 18 minutes. So then at least you know where we are timeline wise. So looks pretty polished when the sun shines on it. It does look kind of cool. I like that that stainless steel look there. Very very shiny. The sun kind of twinkles on it when it comes out there on the stainless steel. It's amazing. So let's see. Oh, Buzzin says that was actually a quote from Elon. What he says, this is real because it looks so fake. Got it. I didn't know that was a quote from him, but thanks for that, Buzzin, over on Periscope. Brittany says an incredible design for sure over on our Facebook page. So hello from New York. The two-fin look is growing on me, but I did like the Tintin look a little bit better. Yeah, I know. I kind of liked the three-fin look as well. Just needed a little bit of the crescent edge there so that it really looked like the Tintin rocket. But yeah, even the fin design is, in practice, as far as what it actually came out to look like, looks a lot different than what the actual renderings were. You can see, if I just slide over here a little bit, but you can see you've got kind of this flat edge here, and there was some question about whether it's going to stay flat like this, or they were going to add another piece to kind of bring it to a point and then maybe have some landing legs on there. So Elon did say a year ago that the plan was that the landing legs would be incorporated in these three fins. Now, with only two of them, you can't really do landing legs. You can't just have two landing legs. So he did actually say that they're going to go up to 6 landing legs, and they'll actually be on the, I think what he said is there's going to be 4 on the body and 2 on the wings. So I believe that's the plan now. But I'm not sure. But he did say there's going to be 6 landing legs. So hopefully he'll give us a little bit of update on that as well, as far as where those legs are going to go. What's going to happen with this flat piece? Is it going to stay flat? Is this the final look? Is this what it's going to look like? Is there going to be a little extension there with a landing leg somewhere? Don't know the answer to it. But these also, we started saying it earlier, but these move. So these are not fixed. They will actually move during re-entry to help dissipate some of the heat and the speed as it's re-entering, so that they can control it, and it's basically going to just plow through the atmosphere and come to a stop, and then kind of come straight down like a gigantic metal skydiver. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on here that's is a little more behind the scenes, like as far as those moving. I mean, you wouldn't know that from just looking at it. So let's see, 2 under, okay, this is from Ultimate over on YouTube. 2 under each wing, two leeward and 2 on the wayward side. Yeah, so right, so that's what I thought that he had said was basically 4 on the body, so 2 on the leeward side, 2 on the wayward side, which is basically the front and the back, and then 1 on each of the wings, or whatever we're calling those things. Are we calling them wings? Is that going to be the official notation there? Are we going to call these wings? I don't know. Let's see. They won't be fixed to the wing. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Maybe they could at least paint it red and white. Yeah, I don't think they're going to paint it red and white just for looks. I think I kind of like the stainless steel look. I think they're going to stick with just that. So let's see, interesting. He went with stainless steel as opposed to composite. So originally the design was to go with composite. SpaceX actually had a whole building, kind of like a tent building, but it was over in the port of Los Angeles. They started putting together, and they did actually start making composites for the body of it, but they scrapped that and decided to switch to stainless steel. This was for a number of reasons. Cost was a factor, but a lot of it had to do with the weight and the heat dissipation for re-entry. So I can't pretend to know everything on how that exactly goes down. But as far as what I've read from what Elon has told us on the stainless steel portion of it, is that stainless steel, let me see if I can get this right, so when you have like ablative heat shields are designed to quickly get through the atmosphere, and they can take a very high heat for a very short amount of time. And stainless steel can take a high amount of heat, not a less peak amount of heat, but a high amount of heat for a longer portion of time. And the weight factor of it was actually a lot less than composites were. I think that's right. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the rough idea between composites and stainless steel. But nevertheless, they started with composites and they went, there's a better idea. We're going to go with stainless steel. Why the countdown? So that's when the event is starting. So the big announcement is going to start in about 13 minutes. We're going to pull it up on the screen here. We'll listen together. If there's breaks in it, I might comment here and there, but I doubt it. I'm probably just going to listen with you guys. We'll hear what Elon has to say with all the updates, and then we'll go on to afterwards. We'll talk about it. We'll see what he has to say, and we'll figure it out. So. What's your function responsibility there, if you don't mind? Well, I don't work at SpaceX. I'm not affiliated with SpaceX in any way. So let's see. How about you're roughly right about the stainless steel? Yes. Thank you, Ultimate. Yeah, I knew that was roughly the case. I'm sure if I was going to make a scripted video, I could probably say that a little more eloquently. But yeah, we're let's see. Do you think Elon plans to build the 18-meter Starship 2.0 in space? How would such a massive rocket even be possible on Earth without the materials failing? Yeah, so I think sorry, I was reading somebody else's comment here too, but I think I wouldn't go too far into the 18-meter Starship, the Starship 2.0 quite yet. I mean, I know Elon has said that that's the next direction, but looking at how much the design plans have changed just for this build, I mean, the 18-meter Starship 2.0 is just kind of just an idea at this point. That's what they're going to shoot for next, but I don't even think we're anywhere close to even starting development on that. So that could completely change. I mean, if you just rewind back a couple of years ago, we had, SpaceX had the interplanetary transport system, and then it was the BFR, and now we're on to Starship, and they're all kind of roughly the same design, but it kept evolving throughout the years. And there was also even before the ITS, there was what was it called, the Mars Colonization Transport, I think, the MCT. That was that was going way back to the original idea for what we're seeing here today, and that was years and years ago. So I think Starship 2.0 it's a great concept. I can't wait to see something like that. But I think the plans for that are going to change drastically between now and when it actually happens. So, is this powered by the Raptor engine or a different one? Yes, this has 3 Raptor engines on the bottom of it. Which, I didn't download that picture. I was going to show that picture, but I forgot. So here, I'll just pull it up on our Twitter here. Let's see. You guys want to see this screen? Can I do it? See, my computer's been fighting me all day here today. Let's see. Yeah, hey, there we go. So this is very artistic, but these are actual photos from the Starship that you're seeing here. So these are the 3 Raptor engines that are mounted on the bottom. They're kind of mounted in a skirt underneath there, so you can't actually see the Raptor engines that are on the bottom because they're up underneath and kind of recessed in the bottom of that. And that's for a couple of reasons. I mean, one of the main reasons is that the Starship is designed to be able to dock with another Starship, so they would need a flat surface to do that. You also want clearance from the ground so that when you're landing, you're not, the engine bells aren't hitting the ground. But yeah, those are recessed in the bottom of the rocket. But those are 3 Raptor engines. Now, some of the question too, a lot of the locals didn't see a lot of this development happening. So some of the question is about the Raptor engines here. Let's see, we can back it up here. Let's go back to the beginning. There they are again. Some are questioning whether this is actually a permanent mount here, or if this is quickly mounted just for show for the presentation tonight. So some think that they may take them out and redo the mounting of it. Some think that it's permanent. Don't know the answer to that, but they're mounted, at least visually. Whether they're actually functional yet, don't know the answer, but they are mounted. So this is going to have 3 Raptor engines. The actual Starship will have more than that. So there will be, I think it's 6 Raptor engines that they're going to have on board. I think they're going to have a little over 30 Raptor engines on the Super Heavy, which is going to be the first stage. This is the second. Just keep in mind too, the Starship is the second stage of this whole thing. This is not even the entire rocket. This is only half the rocket. This is the second stage of the Starship and the Super Heavy rocket. So the Super Heavy, they really haven't even started assembling yet. So that will be the first stage booster, like the first stage of the Falcon 9 booster. That thing's going to have like, they started off saying 31. I think they're now up to 33 engines is what they said. Or maybe it's 31 now. Lost track of how many engines they're putting on the bottom, but it's just over 30. And then they'll have these extra 6 on the Starship itself. So there's a lot of power on and these are some of the most powerful rocket engines ever. So these are getting up there. I mean, they're let's see, we'll go back to here. And I can get back to your comments because they're on the same screen. I can't see your comments when I'm doing that. So, let's see. You're being deceived. Okay. Thanks, Buzzin. Let's see. If this goes up, I'll be amazed. I know, right? It's gonna be it's going to be incredible to see. I mean, this thing's going to have some power. Let's see. Elon just casually go inside the Starship. Do you think Elon has the smarts to make this take off? Don't you have to have permits to take off? I mean, you definitely have to have a permit. So, I mean, SpaceX works very closely with the FAA. They do have to get a commercial space transportation permit from the Commercial Space Transportation Office. They have to get permits from the FCC just to do the communication from ground to rocket. So they definitely have to get a ton of permits to be able to fly this, and they certainly will. Some of the interesting stuff, if you haven't been paying too close of attention, is the Boca Chica Starship. So this is the one that is in Boca Chica, Texas. Now, Boca Chica, Texas is not historically been, a big spaceport. SpaceX is basically the first spaceport to be there, but there is a town, the Boca Chica Village, that is only like 1.5 miles from the launch site, which is too close. So SpaceX is actually actively trying to buy out everybody in the town. They sent out letters maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago that they wanted to buy everybody's property in Boca Chica Village. They were offering 3 times the appraised value on their houses and their properties. They wanted to buy them all out. And I think most of the residents said no. I think some of them took the offer. I think the due date for them to accept it was this week. But a lot of them said no, and so now the question is SpaceX going to come back with another offer? Are they going to try to? There's a nonprofit that is kind of on SpaceX's side that may proceed with eminent domain proceedings. So a lot of controversy there as well for the residents in Boca Chica Village. Are they going to get to stay there, or are they going to be forced out of their homes to make way for SpaceX? Because if they're launching this kind of rocket, I mean, this is pretty huge, and they're gonna have to either evacuate residents or kick them out, buy them out. Hopefully, I guess that would be the better thing. But they need a bigger safety corridor for a rocket this size, especially if it goes kaboom. I mean, just the pressure wave alone from this thing fully fueled with methane and liquid oxygen and the 3 Raptor engines on the bottom, that would make a big kaboom. Let's see, what's the countdown for? Yep, so that's the time until the announcement starts from Elon Musk, so just a couple more minutes. Yeah, we're not I should specify, they're not launching today. This is not happening today. This is a presentation today. I do have a T-minus countdown clock kind of running. That's just because this is what I use for my normal broadcast when we have a SpaceX launch. They're not launching today. This is an announcement. They're going to talk today. They're going to tell us about the updates. Elon's going to update us from what has changed from a year ago, where they are, what their plans are going forward. So we've got some time. Gregory says that I thought MK1 is planned, Mark 1 is planned to be suborbital and Mark 2 is orbital. I had not heard that. That would be interesting. I know that I was a bit confused because I thought that the Starship Prototype was just going to be suborbital, but then he did say that they were going to go orbital, and I thought that Mark 1 and Mark 2 were basically identical builds, that essentially they were the two crews, one in Texas, one in Mark 1 is in Texas, Mark 2 is in Cape Canaveral, or just near Cape Canaveral, Florida, and they were basically competing against each other, like intercompany competition to see who could build it faster or have better design, minor design changes, things like that. And then they would share information with each other as they were building it. But I wasn't aware that there would be a difference in purpose there. So I don't know. That's a good question. If something goes wrong, they don't want to repeat the Long March disaster in China that wiped out a town. It's hundreds of residents. Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the idea here is we want to have a little bit of a safer operation. But yeah, right now that town is a little bit too close. Let's see, heat shield. Yeah, so there's not really going to be a heat shield here. So they've got some. They have been testing some heat shielding tiles, and I think we're going to get a little bit of an update on that. So Elon has said in the past that the stainless steel is going to be there to dissipate a lot of the heat. They have also tested some heat shields, and they've shown us tests of the Starship heat shields. But I think we'll probably get a better idea tonight when Elon talks about the design changes on whether what their plans are for heat shields. But I don't think right now, I don't think the plan is that they're going to have any heat shields on this. Let's see. Hopefully it doesn't get scrubbed. Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to have. I don't think the announcement is going to get scrubbed today. Hopefully not. Although it did get pushed back an hour because the weather in Boca Chica, this is an outdoor event, and the weather was not cooperating earlier. So as of right now, they have not gone live yet, which is interesting. I was kind of expecting them to be live at this point, or at least some sort of like preview here. Here we can switch over, and we'll. I'm going to take my countdown down because it's like 30 seconds till they were supposed to be live, but they are not live. So hopefully soon. As usual, Blue Origin keeping their mouths shut about their progress. We just have to wait until they announce anything. Yeah, Blue Origin, and that's kind of, it's easy to kind of harp on some of those other companies like Blue Origin or United Launch Alliance, but that was the standard until SpaceX came along. Like nobody publicly announced what their development was and their design changes. So I mean, Blue Origin is kind of the normal one here in this equation by not telling people what they're doing. But it is becoming abnormal because of how open and public SpaceX is with all their designs and stuff like that. So hey, I see Space Gal. It's Alicia down in Cape Canaveral is in our Periscope. Hey, thanks for joining us here. We're getting excited. We're just waiting for SpaceX to go live here. They were supposed to be live like now, but they are not. Let's see. I wasn't sure because Hopper had heat tiles on it for testing. It's entirely possible that they ditched them if they aren't needed. Yeah, and that was sort of the confusion that I was talking about, is that the Starhopper did have some heat tiles on there. They've also shown, this is going back a couple years ago now, that Elon showed heat shield testing videos on his Twitter account, and but a lot of those older videos was when Starship was intended to be composite, not the stainless steel version that it is now. So it's set. Oh, hey, there we go. So SpaceX. All right, SpaceX just updated the live event. It looks like they might have delayed it. So apparently, upper level winds are not cooperating with our presentation here today. But they are now. It looks like we got another 13 minutes here to hang out, so I guess I'll throw the countdown up again because they updated it on their YouTube channel here, so we can go like this. So now this is the count that shows on their YouTube channel. So we'll see if this holds up here. Hopefully they'll be good. I imagine there's a bunch of people they invited there, so hopefully they will they're just trying to get people in and get started. So where do they plan on launching it? So they will be launching in two different locations. So this one's going to launch pretty much right there in Boca Chica, Texas. The other one is planned to launch, the one that's being built near Cape Canaveral is planned to launch at Kennedy Space Center at Launch Pad 39A. That's where Crew Dragon launches from. That's where Falcon Heavy launches from. And they're already starting to outfit Pad 39A for a Starship launch pad. They're adding another flame diverter to Launch Pad 39A so that they can launch Starship from 39A as well. But this one here in particular is going to launch from Boca Chica, Texas, right here. Elon's doing Elon time for the presentation. Why are they launching? Hayato doesn't understand my upper level wind map. It was just a joke, Hayato. I'm just joking. There's no upper level winds. It was not being serious. The upper level winds have nothing to do with the delay. Let's see. Space exploration is fun and awesome, but it's mostly pointless. I don't know if I agree with that there, Buns Hun. So, I mean, space exploration provides a whole bunch of things. I mean, one, the immediate thing that SpaceX is trying to accomplish is making life multi-planetary. So this is like super, super long term, which is basically saying, they're trying to ensure against an extinction event. I mean, if there's an extinction event here on Earth, I mean, this is all of humanity is right here on Earth. If something happens to our planet, that's it. So you make ourselves multi-planetary, then you've got humanity has a little bit of insurance against that. So that's the really, really long-term thing. A little more shorter term, I mean, space flights gives you technology developments that you wouldn't necessarily have. I mean, there are some crazy engineering challenges that you've got to solve in order to fly people to space, fly things to space. I mean, even something as simple as doing research at the International Space Station. So when I went to like the NASA social events in the spring, people were talking about they wanted to do medical experiments and they were trying to bring them up to the space station. They had to develop a whole brand new system to bring their experiments to the International Space Station because it was living tissue. And in order for living tissue to travel up to the International Space Station, it's got to fly on a rocket, right? Surprise. But flying on the rocket would cause the living tissues to actually collapse, and then they wouldn't be viable and they wouldn't be able to test them on the International Space Station. So while they were developing this to get those tissues to be able to hold, they developed a whole process to do that, and it turns out that they developed a very inexpensive way to house and transport living tissues that now applies to not just sending tissues to the International Space Station, but sending living tissue samples around on planet Earth when they want to test them in different areas. Now they can produce those a lot less expensively and keep them intact during transportation, even if it's not on a rocket. So it's kind of the long way of saying that space travel, the technology and the things developed with space travel, can benefit humanity even in a non-space travel related way. Right? Does that make sense? You with me? Okay. Wow. Anyways, it's really a talent to just ramble. Are you saying that I'm rambling? Is that what you're telling me? What's going on a story? NASA's created tons of super valuable technology, to be fair. Right, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So that Buns Hun is with me, I think. We're on the same page. When is this thing going up? So originally they had said maybe like October they'd be flying. It sounds like in Elon's latest tweet, which was like 2 weeks ago, he said within a month or so. I would, if I was a betting man, I would lean on the or so part. So I would say you're probably looking at like mid-November to end of the year. Probably no earlier than mid-November is my guess. Through the end of the year. Could be the end of the year by the time this happens. So is this a mock-up for PR? No, this is not a mock-up. This is an entirely functional rocket. This will fly. They are trying to fly this. This is the real deal, as Columbia says. This is the real thing. They are gonna fly this thing. Like I said, probably no earlier than mid-November. I would guess it's gonna be closer to like the end of the year by the time they fly it. Space Gale says December. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. Is like maybe December for the first flight. So let's see. Wow, and it's all assembled outside. Yeah, everything is assembled outdoors, which is kind of crazy. Has anyone ever come up to you and said, so we tried science and it just wasn't for us? No, I don't think, nobody really says that to me, because as somebody said about me rambling, I could talk about science and technology forever. And I feel like maybe I could try to make it interesting. Sometimes I do, or at least people look at me and smile and nod, and then they go about their day, and who knows what they say after they're done talking to me. But I've never had anybody say that to me. Is the final spec going to be SS, meaning stainless steel? If so, Elon needs a partnership with WD-40. Yes, the final spec. This is going to be a stainless steel rocket. That is the, well, unless he changes it during the announcement today, it's going to be a stainless steel rocket. We don't have a way to live without fossil fuel, given just space as a door of energy. Oh, so it's talking about why space flights. Let's see. Cheers from Poland. It's a prototype, not a mock-up. Right. Yeah. So it should. That is a good distinction there. It's definitely not a mock-up. It is a real deal. It's a real rocket, but it is also not the final Starship. This is a prototype of the Starship. So this is full scale, full size, but not. It's only got 3 engines, not the full set of engines. It will likely be a little more polished and put together when they get to a final version of it. But this is a prototype version, and who knows? Maybe they won't. I kind of like the way it looks, just like this. But yeah, this is a prototype. There will be more built. Sandy says, my kids enjoy the broadcast. Well, thanks, Sandy. I appreciate you having your kids along here for a little science and rocket chat. Test concept design for interplanetary rocket. Hi from Canada. Hello, Canada. Are they going to move the crane? While this is earlier, there were some photos, and I don't know if I can share them because I don't have permission. I didn't ask permission from anybody to share them. But there are some, if you go on Twitter, there are some more up-to-date photos, and I didn't look to see if the crane was in them. But one of the things that we should see during the presentation, which looks like it's starting now, is they actually have a Falcon 1 mounted pretty closely right next to the Starship, which is kind of exciting. So, all right, let's get this out of the way. They're just about to start. I'm trying to hurry. Hold on. Bear with me 1 second. Get over to here. And they're playing music right now, so let's see. Okay, I have the volume turned down. So I just want to make sure the volume was turned down because they're playing music right now, and I don't want YouTube to freak out and yell at me for copyright stuff. Tori, did you hear anything on demo besides the FCC filing? The only thing I've heard, yeah, just the FCC filing. So Space Gal is referring to the Crew Dragon. The next milestone for Crew Dragon is the in-flight abort, which right now the best estimates are November 23rd for in-flight abort. That's basically the last step before they actually fly crew to the International Space Station. And I believe in-flight abort is going to happen or scheduled to happen right now, November 23rd. And then after that, they're going to fly crew. Gwynne Shotwell, the CEO of SpaceX, still thinks that they might be able to squeeze that in before the end of the year. I have a hard time seeing that happening if in-flight abort is November 23rd, because that's not a lot of time between in-flight abort and the actual Crew Dragon mission. So I think the actual Crew Dragon flight is going to be pushed into 2020. I think we're looking at like January time frame. Just my guess. Space Cal Alicia wants the social application for that. It's the NASA social application. I know, right? I think I might try to throw my name in the hat as well. Let's see. I was wondering when Crew Dragon will launch. Yeah, we're hoping if in-flight abort happens November 23rd, then we're pressing on and we're making good progress here. So I'm just looking at the Twitter machine here. We got a couple of random comments, which are kind of funny, but some people are saying, taking Elon time into account, the presentation won't actually happen until slightly after noon on Monday. Some people doubting whether we'll have a presentation at all tonight. But it looks like now that they've gone live, I think this is promising. There are a ton of people at the SpaceX site there for the press conference. Let's see, I was just seeing if I missed anything else, but they also have the Falcon. I started saying they have a Falcon 1 that is being held up by a crane right now, it looks like. So they will have a Falcon 1 on display because it is the 11th anniversary of the Falcon 1 that actually made it to orbit. That would be Falcon 1 Flight 4. That was the first time that SpaceX made it into orbit. This is the 11th anniversary. So let's see. When is the new liftoff? Yeah, I'm not sure which liftoff you're referring to, but yeah, we're right now we're watching. Or this is just an announcement. There's no liftoff here tonight, and it's probably hard to tell. It probably just looks like a blank screen to you. They got some cool music that I'm jammed to here. Get some cool elevator music here while we're waiting, but I can't play it for you because YouTube will freak out and give me a copyright strike. Do we have confirmed StarLink dates yet? I think there is a tentative date for Starlink 1, which is in like October. So SpaceX, in case you're not familiar, Starlink is the SpaceX branded internet satellites that SpaceX already launched 60 of them into orbit this year, and now they have 4 more launches pegged for this year with 60 satellites each, and that's starting soon. I think October, let's see, I was just trying to pull it up. October 16th is the date that I have, although that says October 16th. So that's coming up here in just a couple of weeks. I guess that would be the next SpaceX launch, would be the next Starlink mission. But then they do have a whole bunch more coming as well. So they're going to try to fit 4 more in for this year. And in addition to that, they are also trying, for next year, they are trying to fit in, I think, like 20, I want to say 24 Starlink flights in addition to customer flights. So they have they got a ton of Starlink missions coming. They're going to have a lot of those satellites up. And that's one of the ways that they're going to actually generate revenue for some of the Starship stuff is through the Starlink program. Let's see. NASA needs to make a comeback for getting to Mars. I think at this point, when you get companies like SpaceX or even like United Launch Alliance and Boeing and things like that, I think that NASA may be better off kind of focusing on kind of the overall, big picture stuff and then kind of coordinating with commercial contractors like SpaceX and United Launch Alliance to actually supply some of these services. Pretty much like what they're doing with the Commercial Crew Program. I think they would be better off doing that. That's just my opinion. And then NASA doesn't have to worry about doing this whole making a comeback. I mean, who knows what's happening with SLS. So anyway, what did you think? I knew somebody was going to ask about the Jim Bridenstine statement on Twitter. I don't know. I saw. So if you're not familiar, we got this here. Let's see if we can get this in. Jim Bridenstine, who's the NASA administrator, put out a statement that's today. When did he put this out? Yesterday. That said, quote. Here, while we're waiting for the SpaceX thing to get started, I'll put this up on the screen here. So NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine put this statement out, said, "I'm looking forward to the SpaceX announcement tomorrow. In the meantime, Commercial Crew is years behind schedule. NASA expects to see the same level of enthusiasm focused on the investments of the American taxpayer. It's time to deliver." So, I have questions. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I don't know why he's issuing a statement in the first place. I don't know. Kind of my initial reaction was, "Who asked you?" So that was kind of the initial reaction. But I guess he's the NASA administrator, so he wants to chime in. But it seems odd to me that these pointed statements come out when SpaceX has something to come up, some sort of announcement or things like that. And don't forget, this is not necessarily untrue. I mean, this is true what he's saying. The Commercial Crew is behind schedule. But we also have to remember that there's SpaceX, but there's also Boeing. Boeing is part of the Commercial Crew Program as well. There's a funding issue that's going on there as well. And the statement doesn't make. I don't know. It was just slightly irritating to me. This sort of statement that came out. I don't understand the need for a statement at all, and I don't understand why SpaceX is called out and not Boeing. I get the whole maybe it's a rally cry, and he wants to say all contractors should be focusing on meeting their government contracts. Great. That's not what he said. If he had said that, I might feel better about it. But to come out and say in the meantime, to say Commercial Crew is years behind schedule, NASA expects to see in the same level. I don't think NASA's in a position to really start calling people out for being behind schedule when the SLS program is, who knows how far behind schedule that thing is. So I don't know. This was just slightly irritating to me. I just feel like it would have been a better thing to just not say anything. That's my 2 cents. So yeah, there we go. There's my rant on the Jim Bridenstine statement. I knew somebody was going to ask me about that. I wasn't sure how deep I was going to get into my rant, but yeah, it it was a surprise to see that statement come out. I don't understand. I just don't understand why. All right. Anyways, shame NASA fell behind. Musk is far ahead of his time. Is switching from water style to disc. Let's see. I'm trying to go back to see what I missed while I was doing all that. Ultimate says it almost feels like he's out loud saying that he hopes people will be just as excited for the stuff their taxes are paying for, but that isn't SpaceX's fault. Yeah, I mean, part of that, I don't know. It seemed really weird to me because they part of me read that as like why aren't people excited about my stuff? That is not. I don't know. SpaceX does a really good job of getting people excited. You know, part of it is just because they do stuff like this, where they're sharing and they're putting on a whole presentation. I mean, this is PR and marketing, which I don't know. This is exciting to do this kind of stuff. So I mean, that's why people get excited about this. He's raining on the SpaceX parade. Yeah, that was kind of my initial thought. Is it was just like why do we need a statement? I thought 8 o'clock. Dang, yeah, I was supposed to start 20 minutes ago, but we're running 20 minutes late apparently. Let's see. We're about 7 minutes deep into intro, logo, and music loop. Yeah, I know, right? We've been here. And part of me is like, I want to go back to. I don't want to miss anything, but this is kind of a boring view here. I'd rather go back to this view. Then at least you're looking at the Starship. Let's see. I don't mind giving tax dollars to a real rocket ship. This is not for PR. This is a reality check for everyone in the space industry. It's true. I mean, I think this is. SpaceX is pushing the boundaries, and I think, I don't know, there's a lot of people that don't like Elon Musk. I genuinely think that Elon Musk is so public about a lot of these stuff because he's almost like taunting, but in a good way, the other aerospace companies to be like, look what we're doing. Why don't you do some of the stuff that we're doing? Like, why don't you hold public events? Why don't you have big announcements? Why don't you show about your cool new rocket ship you're building, because that's what we're doing. So I kind of feel like it's a little bit of a taunting, but kind of in a good way, to try to push others in the aerospace industry to do what they're doing. And I think the long-term goal there is to try to get support, ultimately get support behind the SpaceX way of doing things. Which, because it's so radically different than the way that things have been done in the past, he's trying to change hearts and minds. When are we going to Mars? Well, I think you're looking at like, I think you're looking at like late 2020s before you send someone to Mars. That's why. That's my thought. Late 2020s, maybe. I don't know. Anybody else? You let me know in the comments. What's your? You let me know what you think when we're going to Mars in the comments there. Gregorius says friendly sibling rivalry between private launch providers. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what it's going for. It's a friendly rivalry. It's not, it's a little taunting, like a little jabs here and there, but it's friendly rivalry thing. I don't think he genuinely dislikes any of the other provider. I think he likes all of them. He's just kind of just stirring the pot a little bit, right? How much of a launch window do we have? Yeah, right. I don't know what the I don't know how long our launch window here is. We're 25 minutes late for this presentation. Space Gal says 2026. Ray's Occult says 2030. These are our Mars landing targets. We got Ken says 2022, Leonardo early 2030s, 2027, 2026, 2022. That's going to be early. I think we'll be there about 2020. Bryce, you might be a little early there, Bryce. 2020 is in like 3 months. I don't think we're ready to go to Mars yet. 2035, we will go to Mars. Maybe 2021. That's a quick turnaround. 2024. Yeah, a lot of people. So a lot of people in the 2020s. Some people pushing it 2030s, 2035. It's encouraging to see that nobody said like 2040. So I guess I'm happy with it. 2019. That's a little soon. Let's see. Are we using the Price is Right rule? Yeah, I think we got to use Price is Right rules. Let's see. Not soon enough for me. I know, right? I'd love to see us get there sooner rather than later. Got to get to the ISS and the moon first. Yeah, I wonder if SpaceX is going to make a moon landing push. I know they're going to do the whole Yusaku Maezawa Dear Moon mission that's set for 2023. And that's essentially Yusaku Maezawa is a Japanese, like, super rich billionaire. He's also into art and things, and he bought all the seats on a Starship. He already bought a Starship mission, an entire mission, all the seats. And they're going to fly him and whoever he chooses, which is a bunch of artists and things like that. They're going to fly them on a mission around the moon. They're going to take a lap around and come back and land. And that's scheduled for 2023. So I don't think we'll be going to Mars before the Dear Moon mission happens. And then the question, I guess, would be: is SpaceX going to make a push to even land on the moon? Are they going to try to land on the moon first, or are they just going to go for straight for Mars? That'll be interesting. I believe the Mark IV Starship should be built in space. That would be interesting. Oh, hey, looks like they're starting. All right, I'll be quiet now, and we'll get over to here. Let's turn the volume up. Oh, look at these views. I'm excited for this. I just got cheering right now. Hopefully, I don't blow out your eardrums. Oh, there's Elon. Hey, Elon.
It's quite windy here.
Oh, need volume.
It's tied down well, though.
Oh, no.
I actually wasn't expecting it to be this windy. Hopefully you can actually hear what I'm saying. Okay, great.
Can you guys hear that?
So,
I don't know if that's all right.
This is I think the most inspiring thing that I've ever seen, and I'd just like to thank the SpaceX team and the suppliers and the people of Boca Chica and Brownsville. Thank you for your support, and just like, wow, what an incredible job by such a great team to build this incredible vehicle. So it's like, first of all, I want to start with that. So I'm just so proud to work with such a great team, and it's really ripping here. By the way, if you're watching this online, it is really windy. So the point of this presentation and this event is really there are two elements to it. One is to inspire the public, get people excited about our future in space, and get people fired up about the future. There are so many things to worry about, so many things to be concerned about. There are many troubles in the world, of course, and these are important, and we need to solve them. But we also need things that make us excited to be alive, that make us glad to wake up in the morning, and be fired up about the future, and think, yeah, the future is going to be great. And this space exploration is one of those things. And becoming a spacefaring civilization, being out there among the stars, this is one of the things that I know makes me glad to be alive. I think it makes many people glad to be alive. It's one of the best things. And this really, we're faced with a choice. Which future do you want? Do you want the future where we become a spacefaring civilization and are in many worlds and are out there among the stars, or one where we are forever confined to Earth? And I say it is the first. And I hope you agree with me. Yeah. So,
I agree.
so what the question? The critical breakthrough that's needed for us to become a spacefaring civilization is to make space travel like air travel. So, with air travel, when you fly a plane, you fly that plane many times. I mean, at the risk of stating the obvious, really almost any mode of transport, whether it's a plane, a car, a horse, a bicycle, is reusable. You use that mode of transport many times. And if you had to get a new plane every time you flew somewhere, and even have 2 planes for a return journey, very few people could afford to fly. Or if you could use a car only once, very few people could afford to drive a car. So the critical breakthrough that's necessary is a rapidly reusable orbital rocket. This is basically the holy grail of space, and the fundamental thing that's required. And it is a very hard thing to do. It's only barely possible with the physics of Earth. I mean, if Earth's gravity was a little heavier, it would be impossible. And if Earth's gravity was a little lighter, it would be quite easy. So we're really right on the cusp of what is physically possible. So in order to create a rapidly reusable rocket and fully reusable orbital rocket, you have to have engines that have incredibly high specific impulse, that essentially are extremely efficient. You need to have a structure that is also incredibly mass efficient. And then that all needs to come back to the launch pad and be able to be refilled with propellant and flown again very quickly, just like an aircraft. So it's just because of the physics of Earth being quite a deep gravity well and having quite a thick atmosphere. This is a tough but not impossible thing. But it is the most fundamental thing. So with SpaceX, we started out 17 years ago, and the first rocket we designed was the Falcon 1, which was that guy right there.
3, 2,
So, yeah.
1. Liftoff.
Stage separation.
Separation confirmed.
So Falcon 1, we thought, yeah, good old Falcon 1. I mean, we started off, we were very naive. In fact, the reason it's September 28th was September. This is the 11th anniversary of the first time SpaceX reached orbit. So 11 years ago today, SpaceX made orbit for the first time. And it was actually our 4th launch. And if that launch had not succeeded, SpaceX, that would have been the end of SpaceX. That was all. I'd run out of money. There were no more investors, and that would have been it. So if that 4th launch had not succeeded, that would have been curtains. But fortunately, fate smiled on us that day, and we made it to orbit. And I have great respect for anyone who makes it to orbit. That was a hard thing. And then. We were very naive, obviously very naive on many levels back then, because we did actually try to recover the first stage. So the first stage had a parachute on it, and we thought, okay, we'll just pop the parachute when it comes back into the atmosphere, and then it'll land somewhere in the ocean. We'll go fish it out of the ocean with a boat. This does not work. So, and I actually remember getting mad at the parachute supplier. Like, yeah, your parachute didn't work. I'm like, no, it wasn't their fault. When the rocket comes in from space, it's coming in, that first stage is coming in like, Mach 10 to 12, and it hits the atmosphere like it's a concrete wall, and boom. So, you actually have to orient the rocket carefully. You have to have aerodynamic surfaces. You have to do an entry burn to slow it down. You've got to guide it through the atmosphere, and then do a propulsive landing. This took us many attempts, and we actually did like a video of a blooper reel of all the times we failed, which was a lot. I think it might have taken us like 14 attempts or something before we finally successfully landed the rocket. So, if we go on to the next slide, we can take a look at. This is Grasshopper. That's actually Falcon 9. It's hard to tell the scale, but that's a Falcon 9 size booster with one engine and big legs with giant shock absorbers, because we didn't know what the heck we were doing. Now, amazingly, Grasshopper had zero crashes. Grasshopper is still alive.
I love that shot.
The cows are confused. Yeah. So they have Falcon 1. What you saw there was a Falcon 9 size vehicle, and then what's really kind of hard to grasp at a visceral level is that this giant ship will do the same thing that Grasshopper did. So this thing is going to take off, fly to 65,000 feet, about 20 kilometers, and come back and land in about 1 to 2 months. So that giant thing is really going to be pretty epic to see that thing take off and come back. And then hopefully, yeah. Yeah, it's wild. So now this is a quite radical. I'll talk about it later in the presentation. This is a quite a new approach to controlling a rocket, much more akin to a skydiver than a plane. But I'll talk about that later. So, going from Falcon 1 to Falcon 9 to Falcon Heavy, which we launched. Actually, the first launch of Falcon Heavy was only February of last year. So it's only been about 1.5 years since the first Falcon Heavy launch, when we did 2 side-by-side booster landings. And I always like this video that was done by my friend Jonah.
It's a god-awful small affair.
I gotta turn it down because I got music playing. I can't play that music. So we'll just have to watch the video. They have this on their YouTube channel. If you look at the SpaceX YouTube channel, if you want to hear the music that goes along with it. But yeah, anytime they put this sort of music here, can't do it because I'm not licensed to play the music, and YouTube will freak out. In the meantime, since there's no, while you guys watch this, I saw a couple comments, but somebody asked about why is the skin so bumpy? Will they smooth it before launch? They will not. This particular prototype, I mean, this is the way it's going to be put together. This was built in the field. It was not built, was not precision machining and things like that. This is how quickly can they put together a prototype that they can fly, test the aerodynamics, the control surfaces, and all that kind of thing. And so how quickly can they put it together? How inexpensively can they put it together? And then once they can verify their designs and any decisions that they've made, or maybe changes that they might make, then I presume, they haven't really said this, but I presume that at that point they will do some precision machining and make it look really nice and polished once they have a final design. I mean, at this point, the design is really not even final. They're not even 100% sure that it's going to work the way they're expecting to. God, the first time I saw that was amazing. Those 2 side by side, that is living in the future right there. Plus the car being in space, that was fantastic. And that's where the space lobster was born. Somebody tweeted at me, asked if space lobster is still a thing. Of course it is. Still a thing.
Yeah.
All right, he's back.
Yeah, I never thought that would happen, actually. Glad that it did. Yeah. It's funny, like the some people wonder, like, why do we have the Roadster with the astronaut, Starman? And it was actually just came from a discussion of my friend Jonas. I was at his kitchen, and I was like, normally when they do a rocket launch, they launch a rocket concrete, but that doesn't sound very inspiring. So, what do you think the most sort of fun thing is that we could launch? And he was like, well, why don't you just launch a Tesla? And that's a great idea. And then another friend of mine, she said, why don't you put a tiny Tesla on the dashboard? So we put a tiny Tesla on the dashboard with a tiny Starman in the tiny Tesla. This is just to confuse the aliens in the future. They were like, what the heck is this? So, just want something to capture the imagination, get people excited about space. So let's see, Starship. So this is, you can really see it right there, obviously. There's the picture, or rendering. It's about 50 meters, so, sort of 165 feet or so. So the ship, I think, actually, I noticed we have an error in our ship dry mass here. My apologies. I wish it was 85 tons. The ship dry mass would be approximately 120 tons. The initial Mark 1 prototype is closer to 200 tons, and in series production, I think it'll probably be about 120 tons. If we get really lucky, it might get down to 110. 99 would be super epic. But in terms of its usefulness, it'll be able to do about 150 tons with full reusability to orbit and back. So this is a very big number for full reusability. The very initial versions we're confident will do over 100 tons, but I think there's a clear path to 150 tons. And the cost of a fully reusable system is basically the cost of the propellant, which is mostly oxygen. This is 3.5 tons of oxygen for every 1 ton of fuel. So one of the advantages of this architecture over the Falcon architecture is that we actually use more oxygen per unit of fuel rather than less. So Merlin, or the Falcon architecture, is about 2.5 tons of oxygen for every 1 ton of fuel. This is 3.5 tons of oxygen for every 1 ton of fuel. So when this ascends, it's really mostly liquid oxygen. Because when you get to vacuum, there's no air, basically. The next slide. Earlier I was talking about how Starship enters and how it's controlled. It's quite different from anything else. It's really falling, and so we're doing a controlled fall. So with a rocket, you're actually trying to brake, as opposed to you're trying to create drag instead of lift. It's really the opposite of an aircraft. You want the most amount of drag that you can produce. And you want some lift, especially when you're in the upper atmosphere, mostly so that you can control the maximum heating rate. You want enough lift to keep yourself high in the low density portion of the atmosphere, so you can burn off velocity, and then but then basically it goes like if this is the Earth, it goes at about a 60 degree. My hand is the rocket. It's going at about 60 degrees. So when in orbit, you're actually going at around 25 times the speed of sound, horizontal to the ground. So this is a very important concept that is counterintuitive to our normal daily life. Being in orbit, being in zero G, is not about altitude, it's about velocity. How fast are you going horizontally? This doesn't. So when something's in orbit, it's zooming around the Earth so fast that the outward radial acceleration is equal to the inward acceleration of gravity, and then you have zero gravity. This is why you actually have zero gravity. The space station, people often think the space station is stationary, but it's actually going around the world at 25 times the speed of sound, or about 17,000 miles an hour. It always looks stationary in the pictures. And since there's no air, you don't have to have an aerodynamic structure. So you can be a totally crazy structure that doesn't look like it should be able to go 25 times the speed of sound, but it does. And you can only feel acceleration. You can't feel velocity. So people sometimes like to wonder, what does it feel like to go 25 times the speed of sound? Actually, it feels like nothing. Only accelerating to there feels like something. So the Starship is coming in. If this platform is the Earth, it's coming in at hypersonic velocity like this, sort of at around a 60-degree angle. So it comes like this, and then starts falling, and then just falls like a skydiver, and it's just controlling itself, and then it turns and lands like that. So that's incredibly elaborate explanation. And then you can get a sense for it. This is much better. There you go. See? Same thing. Look better with the hand? Okay. But it'll look totally nuts to see that thing land. Yeah. That'd be crazy. Wow. Cool. So let's see. Talking about the Raptor engine. So the ship will have a total of 6 engines, 3 of the sea-level variety of Raptor, and those are actually on the rocket right now. So we have the 3 sea-level. In fact, that's a picture of just inside that skirt. That's what it looks like. So we've got the 3 sea-level Raptor engines, and they gimbal, which means that the whole engine moves. So the way a rocket steers is by moving the entire engine. So whereas an aircraft engine is static, and you move by moving like the control surfaces, like the ailerons and rudder and elevator and flaps, the rocket, when the engines are powered, you move the entire engine to steer it. But so the Starship will have 3 sea-level engines that move up to about 15 degrees angle, and 3 vacuum engines that are optimized for efficiency that will not move. So they will be just fixed in place, and that allows us to have the biggest bell nozzle for the vacuum Raptor engines. Aspirationally, the target is a 380-second ISP for the vacuum engine. But this is a very, in sort of space geek terms, this is like really a great number. And even for the steel engines to get over a 350-second ISP is also really great. So, actually, yeah, sorry. I'm looking at the slide view and you're not. So that's what I meant by it looks like that on the inside. Sorry, go back one slide. That's the inside of the Starship right now. So that's what it looks like in the base. All right, and then heat shield. So we've gone through various iterations of heat shield. There's a lot of ways to skin the cat here. Ultimately, we decided to have heat shield hexagonal tiles, ceramic tiles that are basically like a tiny glass vermicelli at a microstructure level. So very, very light, but very crack resistant, essentially glass tiles. And they're because Starship is a steel construction. Like at first, it feels like, oh, it's steel. Does that mean it's heavy? No, actually, it's the lightest construction. Steel is the best thing. I think the best thing about best design decision on this whole thing is a 301 stainless steel. Because at cryogenic temperatures, a 301 stainless actually has about the same effective strength as an advanced composite or aluminum lithium. Unlike most steels, which get brittle at low temperature, 301 stainless gets much stronger. And if it's in the extra hot condition, meaning it's cold rolled to extra hot condition, it also gets way stronger. So its strength to weight ratio at cryogenic temperatures is equivalent or even perhaps slightly better than advanced composites, or aluminum lithium. So this is not well appreciated, because if you just look at the materials manual and say, like, what is the strength of stainless steel, it looks much weaker than it is. You say, what is the strength at cryogenic temperature? Oh, much stronger. Or, at very low temperature, almost twice as strong. That's when it becomes better than carbon fiber or aluminum lithium. And there's another benefit. It also has a high melting temperature. So for a reusable ship, you're coming in like a meteor. You want something that does not melt at a low temperature. You want something that melts at a high temperature. And this is where steel is extremely good as well. So it's, steel has a melting temperature around sort of 1,500 degrees centigrade, whereas aluminum, maybe 300 or 400 degrees. And same thing for carbon fiber, and that's really pushing it. This is having that much higher melting temperature means that you don't need any shielding on the leeward side of the ship when it comes in for entry. And the shielding you need on the windward side, the hot side, is massively reduced, because the thickness of the tile is actually, for a reusable system, is dependent on what back shell temperature, like how hot does the back of the tile that interfaces with the airframe get. And because the steel can take a much higher temperature, your heat shield, even on the windward side, is much lighter. The net effect is that a 301 stainless steel rocket is actually the lightest possible reusable architecture. Then it comes to cost. The carbon fiber we were using was $130 a ton. The steel is $2,500 a ton. Yeah, 25. The $130,000 a ton versus $2,500 a ton. That makes much more sense. So it's $130,000 a ton for the carbon fiber, and $2,500 a ton for the steel. So the steel is about 2% of the cost of the carbon fiber. So it's a good thing we changed from carbon fiber to steel, by far. It's very easy to weld stainless steel. The evidence being that we welded it outdoors without a factory. So, great skills by the team, but with carbon fiber, this is impossible. With aluminum lithium, also impossible. But steel is easy to weld, and it is resilient to the elements. And also, as talking to Austin earlier, he was saying, like, on Mars, you can like cut that up, you can weld it, you can modify it, no problem. Yeah, that's a good point. You're out there on the moon or Mars, you want something that you can modify, that you can cut up and use for other things. That's like for sure a great thing. So anyway, steel, obviously I'm in love with steel. It's time I had to say it, So great, so let's see, going on to the booster. So the booster is designed to take up to 37 Raptor engines. I'm not sure if we'll go that high, but you can really, have 31. I think like the minimum number you'd want is, maybe around 24. But the booster is designed to be able to take multiple engines out. So you can actually add or subtract engines as you'd like. You basically just need a lot of force pushing up. Over time, I think you probably want around a 7,500 ton force rocket, which is about twice the thrust of a Saturn V, a little more than twice the thrust, and on a roughly 5,000 ton gross liftoff mass. So for roughly 1.5 thrust to weight. For a reusable rocket, you actually want a high thrust to weight rather than with an expendable rocket where you want a low thrust to weight, because any thrust to weight below 1 is not useful. Like if you have less thrust than your weight, you don't move. So you actually want a high thrust to weight for a reusable rocket. This is a very important design optimization change. So that's why I think more engines is probably good, and getting up to around 7,500 tons over time, and a 1.5 thrust to weight ratio, or more. So, we think we're probably going to adjust the grid fin design to be kind of like more of like a diamond shape. It looks cooler. It works better too. And then the rear fins are actually just legs, so they're not needed for stabilization or guidance. They're essentially there for legs. All right, so let's go into some of the development testing. This is a Raptor firing. All right, and then obviously we had a Raptor fire on the Starhopper. Yeah. And it's kind of hard to appreciate scale, but it's the same diameter as Starship, and obviously it's just right over there. So it's kind of hard to tell if it's the size of a trash can or how big it is. But it's about the body diameter is about 9 meters or 30 feet, not including the leg span.
Really see that engine gimbal on the Starhopper. It's pretty awesome. See that exhaust trail there just moving all over. And you can see the mock diamonds pretty clearly in this too. I don't know, I didn't really notice that before, but you see those pretty clearly. Love that Starhopper. Wish there was another use for it.
Yeah. So this gives you a sense of size. So the little pixels there, little pixels are a human. And then there's the hopper next to it, the Millennium Falcon for comparison. Then Starship, which is what you see before you. And then that's what will look like with the full stack, which is almost 2.5 times as tall as this vehicle. This simulation will give you a sense of the scale of things.
Oh, this is kind of cool. There's the real Starhopper. Build out of a launch pad and flame diverter, it looks like. Sport structure there. Gee, that's just the first stage.
Yeah, it slightly reminds me of the scene from Spaceballs.
There's the Starship, the upper stage. Wish they would have zoomed out on that. I'd like to see it zoomed out. It's going to be huge.
orbital refilling is extremely important for getting to Mars and getting to the moon. Or establishing a city, establish a city or on the moon or Mars. This is a vital step.
That's why those engines are recessed there, so we can dock with another one like that.
To Mars. Exactly.
Took a risk on the music. It might be muted in the replay.
So, yeah, so a rapidly reusable orbital launcher or rocket is, it says a rapidly reusable rocket is required for alliteration. For getting a breakthrough in cost of access to space, that you don't throw the rockets away every flight. But another key step is refilling on orbit, so that the Starship can get to orbit with, let's say, 150 tons of payload for the moon or Mars or beyond, and then it can get tankered to fill up its propellant tanks, and so that it can depart from low Earth orbit with 1,200 tons of propellant. This is a very big thing, so that your delta velocity is enough to transport literally 150 tons to the surface of the moon or Mars. With full reusability and orbital refilling, which is essentially, the orbital refilling is actually a simplified version of what SpaceX does in docking with the space station. So it's actually harder to dock with the space station than it is to do orbital refilling. But in practicing in docking with the space station, SpaceX has also learned how to rendezvous and dock in orbit in a complex environment. So this is one of the other critical pieces of the puzzle needed to establish a base on the moon and Mars, a city ultimately. And yeah, so those are the critical ingredients. So we think it would be very exciting to have a base on the moon, even if it's just a science base. That, you know, we have, for example, we have a base at Antarctica. Many countries have bases in Antarctica for science research, and this would be an incredible area of research. So whether or not people want to live on the moon, there's definitely a lot of science to be done. And I think this is close as well. So that would be quite exciting to do. And then, of course, we can go to other places in the solar system, like Saturn. But the critical thing that we need to focus on, I think, is the fastest path to a self-sustaining city on Mars. This is the fundamental thing. You know, as far as we know, we are the only consciousness or the only life that's out there. There might be other life, but we've seen no signs of it. And people often ask me, what do you know about the aliens and that? You know, I'm like, man, I tell you, I'm pretty sure I'd know. You know, if there were aliens, I've not seen any sign of aliens. So they're like, well, is the military hiding aliens in Area 51 or something? You know, that's a popular meme. Well, let me tell you, the fastest way to increase defense funding would be to bring out, like, hey, we found an alien. People are like, more money for defense, definitely. This is guaranteed. That would be like on display in 2 seconds. So, the reality is, as far as we know, this is the only place, at least in this part of the galaxy or in the Milky Way, where there is consciousness. And it's taken a long time for us to get to this point. You know, according to the geological records, Earth's been around for about 4.5 billion years, although it was mostly molten magma for about 500 million years. So, but still, several billion years with at least bacterial life and multicellular life for several hundred million years. But here's the interesting part: like the sun is gradually getting hotter and bigger, and over time, even in the absence of global warming, man-made stuff, the sun will expand and it will overheat the Earth. My guess is probably, this is on human time scales, this is a long time, but there's only several hundred million years left. That's all we got. Okay, several hundred million years. But thought of from an evolutionary standpoint, basically, if it took an extra 10% longer for conscious life to evolve on Earth, it wouldn't evolve at all, because it would have been incinerated by the sun. So what I'm saying is that it appears that consciousness is a very rare and precious thing, and we should take whatever steps we can to preserve the light of consciousness. And the window has been open. Only now, after 4.5 billion years, is that window open. That's a long time to wait, and it might not stay open for long. I'm pretty optimistic by nature, but there's some chance that window will not be open for long. And I think we should become a multi-planet civilization while that window is open. And if we do, I think the probable outcome for Earth is even better, because then Mars could help Earth one day. And so I think we should really do our very best to become a multi-planet species and to extend consciousness beyond Earth, and we should do it now. Thank you. Thank you.
Is that it? The end? That's what we leave. Not gonna lie, kind of expected more. All right, well, here comes music. So that must be it. Okay, well. All right, well, I guess, where can we go to start this? I was expecting a little more detail into, I guess, announcements or like design changes that they've made, because he didn't really talk too much on the details of any of the design changes. So he didn't mention anything about the leg structure for Starship. Didn't mention anything about are we calling them wings? Did we decide we're calling them wings? The fins, the wings, whatever those are. Didn't really mention any of those changes. The change in size on the canards that are much larger here now. So yeah, I guess kind of left a little bit more to be desired there from the information standpoint. I thought maybe we'd get a little more. But a couple things that he did mention there. I mean, I think a lot of this he spent kind of building up the whole kind of the concept of why he's doing this and why he thinks this is a good idea and why we should get behind this, and love all that. So he did say, one of the things he said early on, and I do want to replay, before you go too far, I want to replay the simulation of the landing, because there was the landing burn was pretty crazy in the simulation. We're going to watch that again here in just a second, but let me go through some of these points that I wrote down here that I was going to cover. But the first flight for this prototype right here is going to be to about 65,000 feet or 20 kilometers. That was pretty known at this point, but he did say that it was going to fly within 1 to 2 months. So I guess okay. They just said over the thing. I didn't have time to turn the volume up, but they said they're going to commence a Q&A session in just a few minutes. They were basically telling everybody to don't go anywhere. So I don't know if they're going to stream that as well. I hope so. So maybe we have more. They said he just said over. music stopped. So I guess there's a Q&A session or something. I'm so confused. This is halftime.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, please sit tight. We're going to be doing a Q&A session with Elon in just 5 minutes. Please stick around.
It seems like. Listen, I like. I'm gonna turn the music back down. I like SpaceX. I like Elon Musk, but I feel like maybe we should have had like an agenda sorted out before this. Only because he kind of just walked off stage and was like, "All right, I'm out. See ya." And I think everybody started leaving, and now they're like, "Wait, don't leave. We're doing Q&A." So, anyways, so what I was saying was, well, I guess we'll have more to watch here in a second, but he did say 1 to 2 months for the first Starship flight for this prototype here. So 1 to 2 months, I mean, that puts us in late October at the earliest. I would count October out completely. I think you're talking basically sometime in November or December. It's just pretty much what I said at the beginning of the broadcast. My thinking is mid-November through the end of the year is when you'll have the first Starship prototype flight. So and then that's pretty much what he said during the presentation here. One of the things I did want to address, I saw some confusion in the comments there about where the BFR is. This is the BFR. Or this is actually the BFS, the Big Falcon Starship. They've renamed it to just Starship. The BFR was originally the first stage that's now called Super Heavy. So the BFR is no more. This is it. That was before it was BFR. It was called the Interplanetary Transport System, or ITS. And before it was ITS, it was called the Mars Colonization Transport, or MCT. So all of those things, MCT, ITS, BFR, those are now Starship and Super Heavy. So let's see. What else? We had a couple of stats on, the propellant and fuel. I don't know if I'm going to get too far into those. You did talk about 3 sea-level engines that gimbal, just the sea-level engines gimbal, and then there's 3 vacuum engines. They are going to do a heat shield. Glass ceramic tiles on the heat shield, but they're much thinner because the stainless steel can actually take a lot more heat. I don't believe it doesn't look like there are those heat shield tiles on the prototype, so those must be going just on the actual production builds, or maybe a future prototype build. Up to 37 engines on the Super Heavy, but they don't have to fly all 37, and the full stack, once they get Starship and Super Heavy together, will be 2.5 times larger than it is right now. So, and then somebody had asked earlier in the stream about why stainless steel over the composites, and he did mention that here today as well too. That stainless steel is 2% the cost, so a lot less expensive, and because it can take the heat a lot better. And that's pretty much what I wrote down. There wasn't a ton of like, the meat and potatoes that I was looking for. I'm hoping there's a lot of great space flight journalists there. Some that I know personally, some that I just know of, that are very capable of asking very, very good questions. I know Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut, is there. He always asks super technical questions. Chris Gebhardt, I think, is there from NASA Space Flight. Some of the locals are there, like Austin Bernard and Mary the Boca Chica gal. So I'm hoping this Q&A session, maybe they can kind of pull out some more information from Elon that's a little more detailed that we didn't get in the initial go around. Yeah, because that was kind of, I was wanting a little bit more. Let's see. We've got Starship is called the Starship. Yeah, we talked about. I still like BFR. Yeah, BFR was kind of a cool name, but yeah, it's we're just, Starship is the upper portion. So this is the Starship Prototype because that's the upper portion. That's going to be the second stage. The Super Heavy is the first stage there. Hopefully Tim Dodd is there. Tim Dodd is there to pick his brain. Tim Dodd is there. He's in the audience. Let's see. The number of people watching the stream has dropped for 100. Let's just have it. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people thought he was done. I thought he was done. But I guess he's coming back. Oh, it looks like he's walking back on stage now. He just needed a break. Time out.
Yeah,
He's back.
Any questions? So.
Oh, oops, I left too early.
Yeah.
Hi, Elon. Irene Klotz with Aviation Week. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you for the overview. Can you tell us a little bit more details about the flight test program for this and the Mark II?
Actually, can we just turn the music off? I can't quite hear because there's music playing. Oh, excellent. No, I'm sorry. Could you probably just say that again?
Yes, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more details about the flight test program for both this Mark I and the Mark II vehicle in Florida, and what the progression is to get to orbital flight and then a test flight or a commercial mission with the full vehicle?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, yep, with any development into uncharted territory, it is difficult to predict these things with precision. But I do think things are going to move very fast. So our plan is in basically 1 to 2 months to do the 20 kilometer or 65-foot flight with Starship Mark I. Our next flight after that might actually just be all the way to orbit with a booster and the ship. I'm giving you just literally stream of consciousness here. Most likely we would not fly to orbit with Mark I, but we would fly to orbit with Mark III, which will be built after Mark I right here. In fact, we'll start building it in about a month. So, yeah.
All right.
And actually, so sorry to say this mid-question, but I did want to make sure to thank Yusaku Miyazawa for his great support. Yeah, he's awesome. Yusak 2020, that's his handle. That's a great handle. Anyway, he's a super cool dude, and he's like, putting a lot of serious resources to helping out Starship, so I want to thank him very much for that. Anyway, so yeah, just to frame things, we are going to be building ships and boosters at both Boca and the Cape as fast as we can. And each successive, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be really nutty to see a bunch of these things. I mean, not just one, but a whole stack of them. And we're improving both the design and the manufacturing method exponentially. So, for example, with the current way that we build or the way that Mark I and Mark II cylindrical sections were built was in with basically plates. So a series of plates to create each cylinder section. With Mark III and beyond, we will literally take the coil of steel from the mill, unspool it, change the curvature to a 9-meter diameter, and do a single seam weld. And it would also be thinner, which makes it lighter and cheaper. So the rate at which we will be building ships is going to be quite crazy by space standards. I think we'll probably have Mark II built within a couple of months or less, and Mark III maybe 3 months, that type of thing. Mark IV, 4 months, maybe 5 months. And we would seek to go to orbit with probably Mark IV or Mark V. So we would, I mean, this is going to sound totally nuts, but I think we want to try to reach orbit in less than 6 months.
That would be crazy. 6 months. 6 months to orbit. I mean,
provided the rate of design improvement and manufacturing improvement continues to be exponential, I think that is, accurate to within a few months. Yeah.
Hi, Elon. My name is Steve Clark. I'm with the Brownsville Herald. Back in September 2014 at the groundbreaking, you said that the first crewed interplanetary mission could possibly leave.
Yes.
Can you hear me? Could possibly leave from Boca Chica. Do you think that's still the case?
Yes, that is. I think definitely possible that the first crewed mission on Starship could leave from Boca. We actually are internally competing the Cape and Boca. So I think both places will, to the best of my knowledge, both places will launch crewed missions. So I think it is extremely likely that we will launch crewed missions from Boca, and there is at least a 50% chance that it is the first mission. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Hey Elon, Tim Dodd, the Everyday Astronaut.
Hey,
how are you?
How's it going? Good. Yeah.
Good.
You have great questions online.
Thanks. You have great answers.
Yeah, welcome.
So that belly flop to tail down maneuver, I mean, that's something to see. Is that first one, this one right here, 20 kilometers, is it going to come in that hot and do that flip that fast right here, or is it going to be out on the drone ship? Like, that's crazy.
It's basically right where Hopper took off.
Yeah.
That's basically where it's going to take off. Within, very close to where it's just right over there. So yeah, that maneuver that you saw, it will execute now. When we get to, I think maybe Mark 3, certainly Mark 4, I think probably that will be a good time to transition to hot gas thrusters from cold gas thrusters. So using essentially compressed nitrogen gas as the cold gas thruster is a pretty low ISP, sort of 60, 70 if you're very lucky, but very closer to 60. With methox thruster, you can get, without really even trying hard, 300 ISP. Even if you just film cool the walls, without even regen cooling. If you regen cool it, 350, no problem, 360 even. So you're talking about something that's then 5 or 6 times the mass efficiency of the nitrogen thrusters that are on Mach 1. And if you have thrusters of that efficiency, then we don't need to use the Raptors to correct the horizontal velocity. Because right now it's actually, when the Raptors fire, the Raptors kick it over, but they actually accelerate the vehicle in the wrong direction. Then they have to overcorrect and then come back. Whereas if you have strong enough thrusters, you can just, using the onboard maneuvering thrusters without lighting the main engines, you can just go kick it hard, light the engine, land. That'd be, that's better. Yeah.
And then are those pressure fed then, those?
Yeah. Those would be just pressure fed, high pressure gas methox, and so you have a high pressure CH4 bottle, high pressure O2 bottle, and then the great thing is like those they don't care what attitude you're at. You can be at any attitude, any G's, any attitude, it'll still fire. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do love Tim.
Hi, Elon. I'm Tim Fernholz from Quartz. Thanks so much for taking the time.
You're welcome.
2 questions, if I may. One, just technical, following up on the presentation. To do useful stuff in orbit, you're going to need the booster as well as the Starship, right?
Yes. Starship cannot get to Earth orbit without the booster. But anywhere except Earth, pretty much. Well, not counting Venus. But like the Mars or the Moon, the ship, provided you have a propellant plant on Mars or Moon, the ship can easily get a single stage from the surface of the Moon all the way to the surface of Earth without a booster. So it shows you how deep, like Earth has a deep gravity well and a thick atmosphere. But definitely cannot. I mean, if we really went crazy light, you could probably do single stage to orbit, non-reusable with the ship, but that would be pointless.
Elon, I just wanted to ask, NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine had a tweet last night about this presentation. He's concerned, I guess, about enthusiasm for SpaceX's various programs. I'm just curious if you have any comment or response to that.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, from a SpaceX resource standpoint, our resources are overwhelmingly on Falcon and Dragon. That is to be clear. It was really quite a small percentage of SpaceX that did this. Starship, less than 5% of the company, basically. The really hard part that requires a lot of resources is optimizing something past the initial prototype phase and bringing it into volume production. To be clear, the vast majority of our resources are on Dragon and Falcon, especially Crew Dragon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well put.
Hey, Elon. Chris Gebhardt with NASA Spaceflight. How do you guys envision keeping the methane and oxygen inside the tanks from boiling off in any significant quantity during a multi-month interplanetary trip to Mars? And on a more Earth-grounded question, what's your contamination mitigation strategy since these things are being built outside in the elements and not in a factory?
Well, these are pretty far in the distance questions. These questions are relevant, but in the future years, keeping the landing propellant cold on the way to Mars is a lot easier than it may seem, because you can essentially vacuum, just like you'd keep cryogenic propellant stored on Earth for long periods of time. You vacuum jacket it. We would essentially have header tanks that are bigger than these header tanks, and vent them to vacuum. So you would just basically have a tank inside a tank with multi-layer insulation, and this way you can keep things cryogenic for months, no problem. It requires very little energy you don't even really need to worry about boil off. You could apply some energy to cryo cool it, but you don't really need to. You'd have a tiny amount of boil off. In vacuum, things are kind of weird. They're not like on Earth because you have no convective cooling, really, in 0G. So you actually have the sun side of your rocket is very hot, and the not sun side of your rocket is at 3 degrees Kelvin. So it's super cold. So you just keep your cold stuff on the cold side and the hot stuff on the hot side, and this is not a problem to manage. For the long-term stuff, for sort of what's called contamination of Mars, I think this concern. First of all, we'll do everything we can to mitigate it, obviously, but at the end of the day, if you're going to send people to Mars, that's a pretty big contaminant, But I really don't think that some Earth-based bacterium is going to be able to migrate much through Mars. The thing that makes Mars very difficult is that it is both cold and has high ultraviolet. So if it was either cold or ultraviolet, you could evolve to deal with it. But the cold slows down the metabolic processes, and then the ultraviolet shreds the DNA. So you're cold and shredded. This is very difficult for things to exist on the surface of Mars, and that's why we have not found any traces of life on the surface of Mars to date. If there is any life, it'll be very deep underground, and I think very resilient. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
All right. It's also worth noting that over time there have been meteors. There have been chunks of Earth that have been chipped off by meteors, and chunks of Mars that have been chipped off from Mars. And Earth and Mars have actually exchanged material many times over the last several hundred million years.
Hey, Elon, it's Chris Davenport from the Washington Post.
Hey.
Curious about your vision for this area. I mean, when you drive by and you see this, it's surreal.
This is surreal.
Yeah, but I know your vision isn't maybe like a government launch site, like a Cape Canaveral. But what does this look like a private, operational, commercial spaceport?
Yeah, I mean, it will definitely get fancier than it currently is, because the reason it's not fancier is just because it would have taken too long to build the buildings. So since it was going to take so long to build the buildings, we just built it outside. This is like my new thing is management by rhyming. If the schedule's long, it's wrong, and if it's tight, it's right. Yeah. It works. SR-71, fastest plane in history ever. It's also the coolest plane ever. It had no anti-missile defenses except one: accelerate. Yeah. Zero. They tried to shoot it down many times. Zero successes.
Can you just give us a quick sense of what you think this area will look like in, say, 10 years when you are flying crews?
Oh, I think it'll be like a lot more buildings and a lot more stuff. Like way more stuff than is currently here.
All right.
As you can tell, the wind is really quite vigorous. One of the things that I think will be quite important to have locally is propellant production. So trucking massive, thousands of tons of liquid oxygen to the site doesn't make a ton of sense. We should really produce the liquid oxygen here. And by the way, we have gaseous oxygen in the atmosphere, so we basically just need electricity. I forgot to mention, one of the things over time is, for the propellant production on Mars, will be completely renewable because we will use solar panels, pull the CO2 out of the atmosphere. Mars is a primarily CO2 atmosphere. Get the H2O, the water, from the ice. Mars has a massive amount of ice. You combine H2O and CO2 and you get CH4 and O2. There's a very long understood process of run it over ruthenium catalyst. This is a Sabatier process to create CH4 and O2 out of CO2 and H2O. And that same system that we developed for Mars will long-term be used on Earth. So long-term, long-term we will produce the propellant for the rockets using solar power. And pull the CO2 from Earth's atmosphere, use water, combine that to create CH4 and O2 on Earth. And so the long-term outcome will be quite sustainable and renewable for Earth and Mars.
Jeff Faust of Space News. You spent a lot of time this summer working with the FAA, getting approval to do a single Starhopper flight to 150 meters. Now you're talking about flying a much bigger vehicle to much higher altitudes and ultimately flying to orbit. Where are you in the FAA in terms of getting approval for that? And will those flight opportunities be able to coexist with, say, the local residents around here?
I'd say the FAA Administrator for Space has been excellent to work with. Very forward-leaning. Really, I would just like to say thanks to the FAA for their support, actually. Really, there's, minimal delays related to regulatory activity, and they've been really very reasonable, and so, the support's very much appreciated. I think the FAA asks, good questions and wants to make sure things are safe, as do we. So we're going to make sure that the risk to the public is extremely, vanishingly small, almost nothing, basically. It's the same sort of thing that we deal with on Falcon 9 and Dragon, and has gone very well, for the 17 years that SpaceX has been around. So I feel pretty optimistic about things. I don't see any fundamental obstacles. We are working with the residents of Boca Chica village because we think over time it's going to be quite disruptive to living in Boca Chica village because it'll end up needing to get cleared for safety a lot of times. So I'd say probably not very. There would be just not very comforting to the Boca Chica village. I think the actual danger to Boca Chica village is low, but it's not tiny. So therefore, we want super tiny risk. So, probably over time, better to buy out the villages, and we've made an offer to that effect. Yeah.
Thank you, Elon. It's Tarek Malik from Space.com. And I was curious, with the design update here, if 100-person crew size for base flights is still kind of the target now, and how the life support...
Sorry, could you talk about louder? The wind is like howling in my ear, unfortunately.
Sure. Yes, with the design update here, I'm curious if the 100-person crew size target is still the main target for base crew flights, and how the life support system for that is being developed for both the initial test flights and then maybe for Mr. Miyazawa's flight too in upcoming years. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think you could still do 100 people. Like the pressurized volume on Starship is around 1,000 cubic meters. So if you had 100 people, you'd have 10 cubic meters per person, which is, you know, and especially in like a 0G situation, that's actually quite a lot of room. Unlike a 1G situation, you only get to use one surface, really, live on one surface in a 1G situation, but in a 0G situation, you can live on 6 surfaces. You know, you can like all 6 sides of a cube. So if things are way roomier than they may seem. And by the way, 1,000 cubic meters, I think, is close to what the space station pressurized volume is. So you know, Starship is like basically like launching space station pressurized volume on every flight. This is quite a lot. We can make it bigger if as needed. You know.
You can always go bigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Hi, Elon. Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Thanks for taking our questions. We see the Starship prototype here, Mark 1. You talked a little bit about how you're going to build the super heavy vehicle. Can you update us a little bit more detail about how that development is going, where exactly it'll be built, and when we might see it on a test stand or on a pad?
Sure, yeah, good question. So the priority is to build at least 2 Starships at each site, at Boca and the Cape, and then start building the booster. So we'll complete you know, Mach 1 through 4 before doing Mach 1 of the booster, and then we'll do you know, Mach 1 and Mach 2 of the boosters at the Cape and Boca. The main constraint on launching the booster is engines, because obviously the booster has a lot of engines. So spooling up the Raptor production rate is extremely important to, vital, obviously, essential to completing the booster. Doing the tanks and the legs and, say, the grid fins, that is not a constraint. Like that we can get done fast. But we need, I think we'd want to have at least probably 24 engines, but I think really at least 31 engines to launch. So you add that up, you've got a lot of engines there. You know, we need for 4 Starships. We need these just have 3. Mach 1 and 2 just have three Raptor engines. Mach 3 and 4 will have 6. So you add them. This is like a lot of engines, basically, including development engines. From now through orbit, we probably need 100 Raptor engines. And our production rate right now is maybe one every sort of 8 to 10 days. But it should be one every couple of days in a few months. And then our target is to get to a Raptor engine every day by Q1 next year, or sooner.
And if I may, when will we see people flying on this vehicle into space?
Well, I think we could potentially see people fly next year. You know, if we get to
really?
orbit in about 6 months, then and we have it's designed to be a reusable rocket, so a reusable booster, reusable ship, so we can do many flights to prove out the reliability very quickly. So whereas with an expendable vehicle, you have to build, if you want to do 10 flights, let's say, to prove out the viability of an expendable vehicle, you need to build and destroy 10 vehicles. Whereas we can do 10 flights, within basically 10 days. So when I say rapid reusability, I mean, you could fly it. You could fly the booster 20 times a day. You fly the ship 3 or 4 times a day. That's what I mean by reusability. And the only reason the ship it takes more time than that, it's more time than the booster, is that you need a couple of you need 3 or 4 orbits to synchronize for the ship so that it is over. I don't want to get into those complicated thing of orbital dynamics and the rotation of the Earth relative to satellite. But as anyone who's knows space, the track of a satellite, unless it's an equatorial satellite, is a sinusoidal track on the Earth. Unless it's equatorial or sun synchronous. So. Launching sort of due east, you have to kind of wait for the orbits to the ground path to sync up with the launch site, and that's the only reason it really takes maybe 6 hours or something like that to sync up and land back at Boca or the Cape. One of the really interesting things to contemplate is the total mass to orbit capability of a large reusable system where you have a significant fleet in operation. If you've got something like Starship where you've got maybe 150 tons capable to orbit, and the ship can fly, is capable of, say, theoretically flying 4 times a day, but they call it like 75% uptime, so theoretical 3 times a day, 365 days a year. So that's like about 1,000 flights a year for the ship. The booster can do a lot more than that. This is obviously max theoretical. And you've got, 150 tons. That's 150,000 tons to orbit per year per ship. And if you've got, say, 10 ships, you would have 1.5 million tons to orbit per year. 20 ships, you got 3 million tons orbit a year. I think the total rest of world capacity, if you take all rockets on Earth, including Falcon, the total capacity to orbit, I think, is around 200 to 300 tons currently. Total Earth capacity to orbit is about 200 to 300 tons if all rockets launched at max rate. So we're talking about something that is, with a fleet of Starships, 1,000 times more than all Earth capacity combined. All other rockets combined would be 0.1%, including ours. But you kind of need that if you're going to build a city on Mars. So it's got to be done. It's got to be done.
All right.
Elon, hi, it's Bill Harwood with CBS News. I just wanted to follow up on an earlier question about life support systems, because that's not trivial, and obviously you're building a very sophisticated piece of hardware. Are you thinking about closed-loop regenerative systems? Are you thinking about developing these in-house, or are you looking at designs that already exist on space station, for example? And what are you shooting for initially? I know you're not going to be launching 100 people on your first flight, but what sort of a crew complement can we expect on those initial test flights, and how sophisticated does that life support system need to be? Thanks.
Yeah, I think for sure you'd want to have a regenerative life support system. So that just means you're recycling everything. That's for sure important if you're on a several months journey to Mars and then on the surface for 18 months. It's just regenerative is a kind of a necessity. So I don't think it's actually super hard to do that. Relative to the spacecraft itself, the life support system is pretty straightforward. Yeah, you just got to it's pretty straightforward. You got to take out the water vapor and the CO2, convert that back to O2. It's not super hard. The early flights of Starship would not have any people on board. It would just be in automatic mode. It would only be later flights that would have people on board. So I think like even the first flights to Mars, we would send at least a couple of ships, have them just land automatically before sending people. Yeah.
Take about 2 more questions.
Hi, Elon. Eric Berger with Ars Technica. I would just argue the X-15 was the coolest plane of all time. And my question, I guess, is, we're not really used to seeing hardware built in less than a year. Can you talk about the timeline for this vehicle, like when you started fabricating it and how you went so quickly on it? Thank you.
Actually, I'm not sure. I think up until October last year, we were pursuing a completely different design. So it was really, I switched the design to steel, I think, approximately maybe October last year. And then it's like, okay, so what's the fastest we can build a steel, ship in Texas? And then I think we built it in about 4 months or something, maybe 5 months. And then the ship, I think I'm not sure exactly when we started building it, but maybe about 4 months ago that we started building the ship, maybe 5. So it's been 4 or 5 months since we started building the ship from nothing, I think. Yeah, something like that.
And how did you go so fast?
Well, I have this mantra called, if the schedule's long, it's wrong. If it's tight, it's right. Yeah. And I just basically just go recursive improvement on schedule. And say with feedback loop, did this make it go faster? Okay, if it didn't, we're going to need to fix it. If the design takes a long time to build, it's the wrong design. This is the fundamental thing. Over and over, it's like the tendency is to complicate things. And I have another thing, which is like the best part is no part. The best process is no process. It weighs nothing, costs nothing, can't go wrong. So, as obvious as that sounds, the best part is no part. Like the thing I'm most impressed with when I have the design meetings at SpaceX is, what did you undesign? Undesigning is the best thing. Just delete it. That's the best thing. Yeah.
Hey Elon, Robin here from supercluster.com. My question is about potential fund synergy between SpaceX and your other projects. 1, is there a concept for a Tesla Mars rover? 2, are you going to be launching? Yeah, is there a concept already?
Well, actually, the Teslas will work on Mars. If you can you can just drive them pretty much, because electric cars don't need oxygen; they don't need air, so you can just drive them around, no problem.
Are you going to bring a boring machine to the moon or Mars?
I think that would be a good idea.
Me too.
Yeah, because you could just make as much room as you want underground, and you protect it from radiation and everything, and you can probably use the materials for building. And you need to mine ice and dirt anyway, so why not, Totally.
Thanks, Elon. And I don't believe you about the aliens.
I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I hope they're well, if they are here, I hope they're nice, They haven't killed us yet, so they must be not that bad. All right, any other questions?
That's just one. Okay. Hi, Elon. I'm Martin Avignon from the SpaceX subreddit. We've crowdsourced a few questions. It sounds like I only have time for one, but oh well. I was wondering, could you elaborate on the number of engines that will be used for the boost back and entry burns on Starship, and what the dry landing weight of the Super Heavy will be?
Oh yeah, so Starship wouldn't really. There's the 20-kilometer thing, which is mostly. It's going to have 3 engines, but you only really need either 2 of them to work at any given point in time. But the ship, when it's in orbital operation, will only need a tiny bit of impulse to deorbit. You need a very tiny, less than 5% of the mass of the vehicle is needed to deorbit. So you just really puff one of the engines, And the main thing is like trying to get the control, like how do you shut off the thrust precisely, really precisely, so that you don't over or undershoot your target. And then for the booster has 7 engines that gimbal, and then the rest, whether it's a total of 31 or 37, are fixed. The fixed engines would not be used for boost back. So only the center 7 would be used for boost back. And then I really want to try to avoid an entry burn, if at all possible. That would, because that would, no, you have to have a high, the system has to be capable of a very high Q entry in order to avoid an entry burn. But I think we might be able to make the booster buff enough that it doesn't need an entry burn, hopefully. So then it just needs a landing burn. Thank you. Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. Hope you enjoyed it.
All right. So now I think we're done. That went on for a while. I think we got some more info. I feel like there was more info that came out of that than came out of the earlier portions, to be honest. But I think the biggest stuff that I took out of this here is I guess we can be done with this here. All right. Well, first of all, thanks for sticking around. I know that there's probably a little on the dry side. I mean, I was kind of hanging out, just listening and things like that, and so it was getting a little dry. But I think there was some good information that came out of that was nice. I mean, particularly some of it was on the development schedule for Starship. So they are planning to build 4 Starships, 2 at each site, Mark 1, 2, 3, and 4, before they even start Super Heavy. And he did have a good point about Super Heavy, which is that in order to build Super Heavy, like they could build the Super Heavy booster, but they need engines for that. So they really have to ramp up their engine production in order to even start building the Super Heavy. I do think one of the things that was crazy, Gregorius wants me to replay the landing simulation. Right. I'm glad you reminded me about that. I do want to replay that. But one of the things that Elon said in there was that they could be launching crew within 6 months or by next year. They could. I would question that. I don't know if we're gonna see that. I would be shocked, absolutely shocked, if there's someone that flies on board a Starship within 2 years, really. I don't know how anybody's gonna fly on that in 2020. Maybe 2021, I could see it. I mean, they are rapidly developing, so that is good. But it would be very shocking. I'm not gonna rule it out. But he was like, they were like, oh, when do you think realistically they could launch crew? And he's like, well, I think by next year. I was like, what? Next year? I don't know. I just don't see that happening. But prove me wrong, please prove me wrong. I think one of the somebody brought it up in the questioning. I think one of the big things that will be a hassle in that is just getting the FAA to be on board with that sort of tight schedule. Like SpaceX may be able to push along with that tight schedule, and I don't necessarily doubt that SpaceX could build the hardware to do that. The question will be, will the regulatory bodies like the FAA and the FCC be okay and on board with that as well? They're going to be a little more hesitant, I feel like, just from a safety standpoint, especially while you still have that big question mark about the Boca Chica Village residents. So yeah, the whole launching crew next year was, yeah, that would be crazy. Let's see. Mark 3 and 4 of the Starship builds will have the full 6 engines. So they're working towards that. And he said that the Mark 3 is going to start, they're going to start building that like within a month. So that's that's coming, and Mark 4 should be built within 4 or 5 months or so. So we're going to start seeing a ton of these Starships here in probably the next 6 months or so, which is pretty exciting. And then he also said the 20-kilometer flights would be 1 to 2 months from now. I don't know. He went on a rant about launching Starship like 3 to 4 times a day. I mean, I think that's like way in the future. But that's he did talk about that for a while. And yeah, that was the big stuff that we pulled out of there. So yeah, there was some stuff that would seem really, really lofty goals. I love Elon, love SpaceX, but some of the things that were in there seemed like they were really pushing the boundaries there. But yeah, nobody asked about the landing legs, which I'm still curious about. But yeah, we'll see. What else did we have? Didn't talk about a gravity system either. I don't think they're gonna. I mean, he did kind of talk about a gravity system. You know, he said with the Starship, like when you're in 0G, you can live on all the surfaces of the vehicle. So I don't think they're going to implement a gravity system, like artificial gravity, to Mars. I don't think they're even going to get into that. He's going to make people move out of their houses. Yeah, they're trying to buy out the houses in Boca Chica Village. A lot of residents said no to that. So then the question is going to be either they issue another buyout offer. They could possibly do that, or they can start eminent domain proceedings. SpaceX themselves can't start eminent domain proceedings. They have no power to do that. But there is a nonprofit called the whatever county they're in. I can't remember the name of the county. Blah 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 county. Spaceport Development Company or something like that. They're a nonprofit and they have eminent domain power, and they were formed to support SpaceX. So the head of that nonprofit has said that they would explore eminent domain if they were asked to. So yeah, they could go into eminent domain stuff to actually basically force people out of their houses, or they might not do anything. They might just say, well, you can live here, but every time we launch, you're going to have to evacuate the area. And it'll just be a huge pain, but we're not going to kick you out of your house. You'll just have to, every time we want to launch, you're going to have to leave. So that's possible too. We'll have to wait and see what they decide to do with that. Let's see. Hey dude, how's space? It's still there. Let's see, perhaps SpaceX could work with Bigelow and develop some sort of inflatable system. Yeah, Bigelow's got the B330. It'd be cool. Would be kind of cool to tie on the B330 like to the Starship somehow and have some sort of inflatable habitat for astronauts to have on the transit to Mars. It might be a little more comfortable. But let's see, we need, why does the SpaceX build new houses somewhere? Well, I don't know, would you want, I don't know, I guess on one point, like if they were going to build you a free house, that's great. But on the other hand, like they're just offering you money. They're like, we're going to give you 3 times what your house is worth. Like you go build whatever house you want. Here's the money. I feel like that would be, I don't know, if I was in their position, I would want the money. I don't want SpaceX building a house for me. I want to say in what my house is going to look like. So, so let's see. I'm going to go back to this view just so we can look at the Starship some more. Hope they don't use eminent domain for a private company. Yeah. So the way the eminent domain would work in SpaceX's instance here, SpaceX can't invoke eminent domain by themselves because they are a private company. What happened in Texas is actually the Texas legislature passed a law that was allowed for the formation of a it's kind of like a public-private combo nonprofit called I should look up what it's called, what the county is called. Called the something County Spaceport Development something or another. Let's see, Boca Chica Spaceport development nonprofit. What is the name of it? It is called let me see before we go too far on this. Where is the name of it? There it is, the Cameron County Spaceport Development Corporation. So the Cameron County Spaceport Development Corporation is a nonprofit corporation that was formed, and it was given eminent domain authority by the Texas legislature, and it was specifically formed to support SpaceX's operations in Boca Chica, Texas. So basically, what SpaceX and the nonprofit would have to prove if they wanted to invoke eminent domain is that there was some governmental function for the spaceport in order for them to kick people out of their houses. And from what I've read, I'm not a lawyer, I don't really know too much about eminent domain stuff, but from what I've read on it briefly, it sounds like that would be a relatively easy thing for them to prove, specifically because the legislature passed a law to grant that eminent domain authority to the nonprofit. So I think that was that's the big kicker there, is basically the government has already told the nonprofit that, yes, we want you to do this, and this is good for the state of Texas. So because they've already done that, it makes it a little bit easier. It's my rough understanding of it, but there you go. Let's see. The fact that SpaceX built Starship in 5 months is an incredible feat. Yeah, for sure. That's amazing. I still can't believe how fast everything's come together. Let's see. My point about Jake says, I understand. My point was that he's against it, basically. Yeah, whether you're for or against them actually using it is definitely another story, and there's certainly an argument to be had there. Like, should SpaceX be kicking people out of their homes? It's hard to say. It's really hard as somebody that's far away from the situation to say one way or another. I mean, obviously, I'm removed from the situation. I'm like, rah, rah, go SpaceX. Like, this is fantastic. Build starships, go. But obviously, there's real people there with real houses, and they're living there. And like, if this is your dream home, or your family's lived there for decades, and all of a sudden you got this company saying, hey, get out. I could see where somebody might not be happy about that. So let's see. Yeah, Charles asked about the transpirational cooling and switching to tiles. Yeah, so Elon actually said a while ago that they were going to move away from the transpirational cooling, where they were going to actually use the liquid methane to kind of cool the skin of the Starship. He actually said a couple months ago that they were going to go away from that. I wasn't sure if they were going to actually use heat like tiles, but he did say today they were going to switch to the tiles. Sounds like those are the tiles that they were testing on the Starhopper as well. They had a couple of tiles there, so testing those tiles for vibration and shakes and things like that on the Starhopper. Let's see. Columbia over on Periscope noting that Bigelow is being considered for the Gateway. Yes, that is true. The Bigelow B330, they're really pushing hard to try to be a front runner for the Lunar Gateway for the Moon 2024. Let's see. I know you. I was kind of turned off by the presentation at the point of the buyout. You have to elaborate on that. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Let's see. What else did we miss here? Give Boca Chica residents a plot of land on Mars with the buyouts. It's kind of a cool idea. I'm not sure SpaceX has the authority to do that, but it'd be cool. It's like when you buy those you buy like an acre of land on the moon. Do you actually really own the acre of land on the moon, or is it just a piece of paper? I don't know. I've always seen those. I don't really know how those work. I imagine that it's really just a piece of paper. Let's see. I mean, it sounded like they wanted to buy out the people who live. Yeah, they absolutely. SpaceX sent a buyout offer letter 2 weeks ago to every resident in Boca Chica Village. They had an independent appraiser come in, appraise all the properties in Boca Chica Village, and SpaceX then offered every resident 3 times the appraised value, non-negotiable. It was 3 times the appraised value, non-negotiable. They had until like yesterday or the day before to accept the offer, and they said they would buy them out. And they basically said it was this is the first and final offer, and whether it actually is the final offer, don't know yet. But they said it's the first and final offer, 3 times the appraised value, take it or leave it. And a lot of people said no. Some people took it. But a lot of people said no. So it'd be interesting to see how they proceed from here. But yeah, they're really going to have to do something with the residents, because they're less than 1.5 miles from the launch site, which is way too close. Like, you can't even get that close. When I went to the NASA Social to watch the Falcon 9 launch, it's a much smaller launch vehicle, watch the Falcon 9 launch, the closest we could get was 2.9 miles. And that was like practically VIP viewing. That's like the closest that we could possibly get. I mean, we were with a NASA escort, not like a fly flying around. Like a NASA escort that brought us right to that location. And 2.9 miles, closest we could get. This whole town is like 1.4 miles from the launch site. That's really close, especially for a gigantic vehicle like this. Columbia, I kind of agree with Columbia here from Periscope. He says there's always counter offers. It's cheaper than going to court. Yeah, and that's kind of why I question about, they said it's the first and final offer, but I kind of question that just because, I think any good lawyer would tell you that it's better to work things out privately than try to go to court and use the eminent domain proceedings. I think they would try to work it out and get the residents to take some sort of offer before they would, because like you said, it's cheaper than going to court. So, let's see. SpaceX managed. Oh, not waiting for schedules to. I'm not sure what that means. From Gordon. Let's see. How far is South Padre Island? That's also very close, but I don't know about the town. There is a town that's a little further north. I don't think it's as close as Boca Chica Village. Let's see. Why isn't the lack of an escape system like shuttle more of a talking point? It seems like a big weakness. Yeah, so I think I always had an issue with the space shuttle's lack of basically the death window there from the space shuttle. The space shuttle had no form of abort for the first 2+ minutes of flight while the solid rocket boosters were firing, which we sadly was very apparent on the Challenger flight. But once after that, they did have some methods of abort. And with Starship, I mean, you've got kind of the same. You're a little bit better with Starship, at least, because you've got the capability to abort the flight immediately and go into some sort of recovery or contingency plan. So at least you don't have to wait for like solid rocket boosters to finish burning out or something like that. You could go into some sort of contingency plan immediately. But the idea is behind Starship is to try to build, and whether you necessarily agree with this or not is certainly up for discussion. But the idea is that one, the Starship itself kind of serves as an abort system all by itself. So that's, you've got Super Heavy booster, which is on the bottom, then you've got the Starship, and if something happens with the Super Heavy, the Starship could abort and pull itself away. Now, it can't get to orbit, but it could even do a pad abort. If something happens on the launch pad and the Super Heavy starts, going haywire, the Starship could pull away. Now, it's pretty slow moving, but because that stainless steel has a high heat tolerance, it could be fully engulfed in a giant fireball, and the Starship could fly out of that fireball and fly to safety. So the Starship does kind of serve as its own abort system. You can do an in-flight abort with the Starship to pull it away from the booster. The trouble comes if there's something that happens with the Starship itself, and that's, I think what they're really going for is they're trying to create a simple and reliable system that just works. And I don't know, it's kind of I'm not sure how I feel about that yet. We're gonna have to see how testing goes. But I mean, when you really think about it, like just about every spaceship has some component that's like that. Even in the Crew Dragon, I mean, the capsule itself, like there's no way to leave the capsule. Like the astronauts can't jump out the window and parachute out. Like they're still relying on the capsule to operate perfectly. So they can't abort away. They can't get out of the capsule and abort. It's another one of the big question marks about why having like those Super Draco engines integrated right in the capsule is concerning for some. But yeah, in order to, there's going to be some component on the spacecraft that has to work. And so for SpaceX, they're just making that the entire Starship. So, and Andrew brings up a good point. Like, we've got things like, like airplanes, commercial airplanes, like Andrew says, that there's no, we don't have an abort system for airplanes. Like we rely on redundancy for airplanes, contingency plans for airplanes, emergency systems on airplanes, so that when there's an emergency, you can push through them. And I think that's SpaceX is very much looking at the Starship program like a commercial airplane. They want to fly it, land it, refuel it, fly it again. Like they're basically like, this is an airplane that is just going to go to space. Like this is a commercial airplane that will fly to space. So I think they're thinking much less like a rocket company and much more like an airline company. So I think Andrew's comment over on the YouTube channel about how about commercial airplanes that don't have abort systems is very relevant. I quite worry about lack of commercial customers for SpaceX. Elon said something about it. I don't recall hearing anything about commercial customers for Starship. I mean, I think it's still way too early in the process for that. But I mean, we do have one big one, which is Yusaku Maezawa, that's doing the Dear Moon project, and that's a ton of resources there. But SpaceX does have a ton of commercial customers for Falcon 9. So they're still cranking away with the Falcon program. This is still very much developmental. They're just developing this. They're not ready to even sell this to commercial. I mean, I'm sure they would sell it if they could, but I don't think they're really pushing hard for commercial customers for Starship yet. Let's see. No one's jumping out of an airplane with a parachute at 600 miles per hour. Nobody gets a parachute. You don't. If you're taking a flight to New York to Florida, they don't give everybody a parachute on board. And Jack makes a good comment about the commercial customers. When StarLink is up and running, they're intending that to be a big influx in cash as well. That's one of the main reasons why SpaceX is working on StarLink. That's their private internet service solution via satellite one of the reasons why they're developing that is to try to infuse cash into the company so that they can do further developments. Let's see. What is that a picture of? That's the Starship right there. That is SpaceX's Starship Prototype. It's a prototype. It's not the actual, not the final version. It's a prototype, fully functional prototype, stacked. This will fly its first mission in 1 to 2 months. I would guess. My guess is mid-November to the end of December. That's my guess, but that will be the first. This will be the first one to fly, and that's it. That's the real deal right there. Looks like out of a 1950s comic book. He said something that the CRS missions are the most important customer. Yeah, SpaceX does still have, and actually that's still their primary focus is the commercial resupply missions to the International Space Station. So that's all the CRS missions they're doing now. That will be future CRS missions that are still yet to be scheduled. So they've got a ton of that's still very much one of their main focuses is CRS flights, the Crew Dragon flights, and this is a very small portion of what SpaceX is focused on. So with first stage reusable Falcon 9, SpaceX already outpaced satellite development. That's why SpaceX hasn't launched in a couple of months. Well, actually, the main reason why SpaceX hasn't launched recently is actually because their customer payloads, SpaceX had customers slotted for this year, but the customers reported to SpaceX that their payloads weren't ready. So SpaceX actually has launch vehicles that are ready and waiting for payloads. They're waiting for the customer to deliver the payloads to SpaceX. So SpaceX has contracts. They have paying customers. The customers just they haven't sent the payloads yet. So SpaceX is like, all right, well, we got all these flight vehicles. We're here when you're ready. Fortunately, I mean, they still have the money. They got the money. They got the contracts and stuff like that. But this is a very weird time for SpaceX because they are ready. Their customers are not. Let's see. Hope you run it past Greta Thunberg first. She might not agree. I'm not sure what you mean. I'm not sure what you're referring to there. Why isn't Starlink suitable for VoIP? I mean, I think it is intended to be suitable for VoIP. I mean, I think Starlink is going to be a super low latency internet service, so I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be suitable for VoIP, which would be voice over IP. It's basically phones over the internet. I don't see why it wouldn't work, especially being that it's super low latency. I mean, people use VoIP phones right now with like HughesNet, which is a current satellite internet service provider, and HughesNet is at geostationary orbits. That's much higher latency. People are already using VoIP with that, so VoIP on Starlink, that should be fine. Let's see. So you're not worrying about lack of income for developing Starship? No, I'm not worried about lack of income for Starship at the moment. I mean, this is research and development. I don't think they're in the stage of income for Starship yet. But part of what SpaceX takes in for they've got their satellite providers or their satellite customers. They've got CRS missions. They've got Crew Dragon missions. They've got private missions like Yusaku Maezawa. And in all of those sales, there's some portion of their income that is research and development, and that's designed to do stuff like this. They're just playing around and testing with stuff. So I'm not too concerned about an income stream yet. Why is SpaceX not live? Did they cancel it? No, we're done. We're about to be done here. SpaceX was live. They were live, and it's finished. So we're about to be done here. Let's see. VoIP over Wi-Fi connected to Starlink would work, but not a cell phone connected to Starlink. Antenna is too big. Yeah, well, yeah. So Starlink is intended to be an internet service provider. So Starlink wouldn't be like a cellular provider. They would be an internet service provider. They might Starlink might sell its services to, say, Verizon or AT&T, and Verizon and AT&T would still perform the cellular functions, and they might use Starlink as their backbone to the internet. I don't think it'll happen. I think more likely you're going to see Starlink, selling their services to the likes of, like, maybe they sell it in-home to people, but I kind of doubt that. I think Starlink will end up selling their services to, like, Comcast and Spectrum and, whoever the internet service providers are. That's how that'll work. Oh, Gregorius says replay, please. Right. Yeah. Thank you, Gregorius. What I wanted to replay was the landing bit. Thank you. Thanks for reminding me, so I didn't get too far off my rant there. Let's see. Let me find it real quick here on my other monitor. Where was it? Oh, that's the Q&A. So we went too far. Can't remember where it was. Let's see. Well, I guess you guys can look around with me, and if somebody can find it before I can and give me a timestamp. Here, we'll switch over to here, so at least you can see. Let's see, where were we? Oh, there. This was the first portion of it. What's happening? Why is this not moving?
Going at around 25 times the speed of sound, horizontal to the ground. So this is a very important concept that is counterintuitive to our normal daily life. Being in orbit, being in zero G, is not about altitude, it's about velocity. How fast are you going horizontally? This doesn't...
I really can't find...
So when something's in orbit...
I don't know where that point is in the... Oh, hold on. All right, let me switch back to here. I gotta, like... Because the live session is done, I gotta refresh this here. All right, let me see if I can find it here. All right, this is probably going to be, this is going to take a second here to find this. So I do want to replay this. So let me see if I can find it real quick. And then, nope, so this is the Q&A. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Here's the video that they played, blah, blah, blah. All right, we can switch back to here. The volume back up. That was the end of their video there. Where was it? Is anybody gonna have a timestamp? All right, well.
This is a very orbited. Yeah. That would happen actually. There's a picture to orbit atmosphere, so you can burn off velocity instead of lift. Starship, some lift,
this
especially
animation
when you're in the upper
that
atmosphere.
I wanted to show you, but it's the end of the animation.
You control the maximum heating rate. You want enough lift to keep yourself high in the low density portion of the atmosphere, so you can burn off velocity, and then around.
That's kind of the end of
that glass strength. This is the carbon fiber where you that up. You can weld it. You can. I think like with an expendable rocket where you want a low thrust to weight. Testing. That's a fire.
All right.
Also
yep, well,
came from just legs with giant shark.
I guess I can't replay it because I don't know.
And are in many.
I can't find it. It's 4920 says somebody. Thank you. Thanks to whoever just found 4920. the animation that oh, there it is. Gregorius says 1 hour 6 minutes. Oh, way over here. All right, maybe that's why I couldn't find it. 1 hour 6 minutes. That's the Q&A portion.
So, music playing. Building it. Thank you, Suck. Anyway, so cylinder section with be thinner. Mark 3 orbit.
What's the
How are you? That's good. Good.
So there's where Tim Dodd's question was.
With putting orbit with. Yeah.
Hi, Elon. Irene. Claude.
I can't find it. You're passing it. Well, that doesn't help me. Minus 1 hour and 6 minutes. I can't do minus. I need like the actual timestamp. All right. Well, I guess I'll let if somebody wants to poke around and see if they can find a timestamp for me. I'll show that that flip around there. But other than that, I'm pretty much ready. We're probably going to wrap up here and call it a night because we've been going for like 3 hours now. This has been a long one. And I think we pretty much covered everything. So there weren't a ton of new developments there. I mean, I think, like I said earlier, the biggest, just a short clip, it's 4920. Jack says 4920. All right, I'll go back to 4920. 49, here's 4918. 4920, 21, 2 to 3, 4. That's got music on it, so I'm going to turn it down a touch. Yeah, see now we're at like 49:35 here, Jack. I got no. Let's see. Well, we'll let this. I'll just let it play out while I talk. Just go to 49:20. I'm at 49:20. Like we're past 49:20. We're at 49:48 now. I'm getting like a million timestamps here. We'll let this play out here for a second. All right. Yeah, because there's super heavy landing. What I wanted the Starship landing when it does that like swing around. It was kind of crazy. I should have wrote down the timestamp when it happened. Because that was insane to see that. SpaceX needs to partner with Microsoft and Google. Yeah, I don't know if they have anything to necessarily partner with them quite yet, but who knows? It could happen sometime in the future. How do you think Jim Bridenstine feels about this announcement? Starship is both reusable and more powerful than the SLS. I don't know. I think, Jim Bridenstine with his statement earlier, I mean, I think he was, he's really trying to ensure that that existing contracts are being met. So his main focus right now is his commercial crew, and I mean, I'm sure he's pushing for SLS to be completed too. At least I hope he's pushing them hard as well. So yeah, all right. So we're at like 51 minutes here. I didn't see the clip anywhere in there. Somebody else gave me a timestamp. 35:44. Go back to 35:44. Was that it? Let's see. 35, 41, 42, 43, 44. Yeah, there it is. All right. Who found that? 35:44. That's the clip I'm looking for. Oh, thank you to Chusacon. All right. Yes, 35:44. Thank you. This is the clip that I wanted. All right, now we're talking here. So this is what I wanted to show. And actually, I'm gonna slow this down. Can I slow it down? Playback speed. We want to do like 0.25 playback speed so we can talk about this. This was the landing bird, which is kind of crazy. So what he said was, it's gonna come down. This is a Starship. It's gonna come down like a skydiver. It's like belly flop on the way down. And then in order to land, it's got to fire the engines and kick the Starship around. But in order to do that, as soon as it fires the engines, the engines are pointing out this way, it's going to fire the engines right there, which is going to cause the Starship to to gain horizontal velocity. Now it's going the wrong way. It's got to null out that horizontal velocity. So it's got to overcorrect, fire the engines again the opposite directions to null out that horizontal velocity, then get itself vertical, and then land. I thought that was kind of a crazy thought because it was something I didn't really think about, but it was, you know, when it's like that, it's got to get itself oriented vertically. So in order to do that, fire the engine, gimbal the engines, fire them. It builds horizontal velocity, overcorrect, fire again, and then land this way. So yeah, that's the animate. That's what I wanted to show. Whew. All right. Oh, somebody's giving me keyboard shortcuts for playback speed. I did not know that there were keyboard shortcuts for that. So yeah, there we go. Props, huge props to Chusacon for actually finding the clip. All right, let's do this at like normal speed here, so that we can see that one more time in normal speed, and then we'll get it. He said, Chusacon says, "I don't steer you wrong." That's what I needed. This is exactly the clip that I was looking for, right there. Then there's that little swing around move is crazy to see. And then I love that they're like showing the mock diamonds in the animation as well. And then the landing. All right, there, we found it. Okay. This landing will be hard for passengers. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I'm not sure how that's going to work how that's going to feel for passengers. Yeah, because that seems like that might make you sick. Doing that little maneuver there. Has any craft ever come back from Mars with samples? No, I don't think we've ever done a sample return mission to Mars. At least not that I know of. I'd love to hear about systems integrations that allow this vehicle to be remote controlled. Well, I mean, I think systems-wise, it'd be, you know, same sort of systems that are running the Falcon 9. I mean, Falcon 9 uses just regular off-the-shelf computer parts. They just use a lot of them for redundancy. So we've talked about this in the past on our stream. Falcon 9 uses 3 different flight computers, and if any of them, if one disagrees with the other 2, it will force a reboot on that one computer, and then the other 2 take over until that one reboots. And so they do that so that they don't have to fly radiation-hardened computers, which are really, really expensive. And so they can just fly the just kind of regular non-radiation hardened computers, and they just have redundant systems in place. Let's see, should be somewhere. Yeah, we found that already, so we took a look at it. Let's see. Better have lots of barf bags. Yeah, right. That little flip around maneuver, that could be interesting. But all right. Well, I think we're gonna wrap this up here. We've been going for a while. I'm sure we will keep the chat up a little bit for a little. We'll have lots of stuff to talk about. So yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, like the video if you liked hanging out for a little while with us tonight. If you're on the Twitter machine, go follow me over on the Twitter machine, because I'll probably have lots more updates after this. And I think I'm going to try to put together a video about this update. I'm just gonna have to figure out what I want to talk about, like an actual scripted video, for the people that didn't want to sit through the what do we have, 3 hours and 7 minutes that we've been live here. So we'll try to put together like a 5-minute scripted video that's like, hey, this is what you missed in case you didn't hang out with us for 3 hours and 7 minutes. But we had fun, or at least I had fun. I don't know if you had fun. I had fun. Hopefully when I have fun, you're also having fun. I don't know, at least that's the goal, right? That's what I'm trying for. So yeah, it's this is the part where I say goodbye. I try to say it once. It usually takes me about 15 tries to say goodbye, because I like to see everybody's comments. But I am pretty tired. It's 11:30 Eastern time, and we've been streaming now for over 3 hours. So I think I should wrap this up here. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody again for joining, and we'll see you guys all on the next. When is our next video? Our next video. I mean, I'll have some scripted videos coming out. Oh, October 3rd, super top secret weather balloon flight that just took place in Las Vegas earlier this week. Keep an eye out. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because that's going to come out October 3rd, assuming I can get the video ready in time. I'm still working on it. Yeah, keep an eye out for that. October 3rd, Overlook Horizon 21. You'll get the nitty-gritty details on what I was doing out in Las Vegas earlier this week and why I was flying a weather balloon in Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. You guys can all speculate about that in the meantime. So, all right, anyways, that's it. I'm going to bed. I'm tired. But thanks for joining. My name's Tori. This is Overlook... Screwed up the outro. My name's Tori. This is Overlook Horizon. We'll see you guys on the next video. All right, goodbye.